We open our scene looking over the grand and dark city of Rome. This is not the Rome of our world, but as I said, much more grander and much more sinister. The Vatican looms higher in this world, with the shadow of St. Peter's creeping across the River Tiber come late afternoon. We see a sped up reel of time as the sun crosses the sky, and the people in the streets move like a swift blur of ants as we see the shadow wax into night as the moon rises high in the sky. The streets of the Jewish quarter form their own little labyrinth, and there are notches in the swords held by the heroes of Roman statuary. Here, the ancient and majestic city of Rome is in decay as the rape of antiquity is on full display. We see statues that have been defaced, sometimes quite literally. The marble of the temples of Zeus and Artemis being mined for Christian monuments. To the east of the main thoroughfare, the road, the Corso that runs through the heart of Rome, are lined with fashionable shops patronized by the wealthy and pretentious, just a stone's throw away from the grinding, crippling poverty of Rome. Mostly the Jews, living in crooked little ramshackle houses. But what we focus on this evening is the Palatine Hill. It has been raining, and there's definitely a mist that is moving across the stones. The Palatine Hill is occupied by a great deal many manses. Each is on a sizable parcel of land and is bordered by the walls surmounted by iron spikes. Each has gates of iron that are bolted and chained against the perils of the night. Lamplight can be seen in many of the windows, and the strains of a minuet can be heard from far away. It would appear as if a party somewhere on this street was in progress. The year is 1666 AD. Carriages rumble past on their way uphill as footmen with powdered wigs and immaculate livery cluck at their horses. Each coach is marked with a coat of arms. As the night presses all around, we focus in on a gathering. This gathering was preceded by a calling, an urge, which for some of you, depending on your distance of Rome, was almost sexual in its urgency. The first to emerge out of the night is a young man, a young, handsome man, with near shoulder-length dark hair. We see, after 200 years, well over 200 years, Valentino di Vaia, in the company of a man that none of us recognize. Valentino, go ahead and describe what we're seeing as Valentino ascends the Palatine Hill after weeks of travel, after being summoned by this urge at an impossibly inconvenient moment. Describe Valentino, what he's been up to in the last few weeks, and where he was when he received this call, and what has brought him here now.
Valentino would have been in his villa entertaining several mortal women when he received a message for this summon, and definitely in the middle of his ongoing long-term plans to ascend the city in leadership. He was very frustrated at the idea of being torn away after having been put in such a useful position. But he would have heeded the call and summoned Gabrin, for he trusts this man more so than anyone else in the city. He would have had to have given his next lieutenant more or less oversight over the goings-on of the city, because he does not want Gabrine away from him, such as his anxiety and growing paranoia. Uh, in these last few decades. So he would have had Gabrine come with him, partially out of fear for his own safety. And as he ascends these steps, anyone watching would see him look over his shoulder. Even as he saw Gabrine, he would be checking corners and looking around, uncertain if perhaps this was just a trap set by someone he hadn't finished off. Maybe an elaborate ruse, and his hand is always on the hilt of his sword as he looks around cautiously, approaching this.
And I should mention that, of course, a letter came, but the summons was more than simply a mortal missive. There was a supernatural compulsion that compelled you to come to Rome, that was impossible to ignore, impossible to resist. Someone quite powerful has summoned you here. You know that to be true, and though the letter gave no indication of who that might be, the summons was supernatural in nature, and you find yourself drawn to the Palatine Hill. And as you walk down the streets, Valentino, with your cloak swirling around your boots, we see the man accompanying you, Gabrine. He is a slightly short young man who appears to be in his late 20s with strong Rom features. This gypsy's manner is smooth and welcoming, although this evening he is looking around the Roman knights suspiciously. While not traditionally handsome, he almost always has a ready smile on his face, even when carving someone's heart out, as you've seen that on more than one occasion. Gabrine speaks with a thick accent, wearing a coarse tunic and a bandolier of knives slung around his shoulder. Though his outfits may be slightly drab and are suggestive of a vagabond, Gabrine also favors plenty of flashy gold jewelry and can often be seen toying with a knife or two with his agile fingers.
I do not like this night. What you say, boss? Why are we here?
Cannot say for certain, but I suspect we'll know very soon why I had no choice but to come here. Be ready. I do not know what will follow this.
Gabrine looks uncharacteristically nervous tonight. He is trying hard not to show it, but you can always tell when he's a bit nervous. He always plays with a knife in his hands, and he indeed has one out, looking around at this opulent surroundings on the Palatine Hill as if he doesn't quite belong here. You arrive, Valentino, before the gates of an impressive manor, a great manse that looms over the others on the Palatine Hill. And as I said, occasionally you'll see carriages rumble by. The inhabitants are glimpsed inside, are richly accoutred and masked inside. The drivers occasionally cast you a look, particularly Gabrine, of contempt. No one stops to converse with you, however. Everyone is eager to get on their way. And as you approach the gate of the manse, you see that the doors are closed, and the summons, though holding strong, has given a pause. The camera shifts away from the two figures in the fog that is rolling out across the Roman streets as we see another pair emerge out of the night fog. We see a lovely young woman and her gentleman escort walking up the streets, richly dressed. This lovely young woman we don't recognize, however, she does look vaguely familiar. Bianca Dispenser, you were in Elysium in Naples when you were summoned by this urge. As I said, of course, a letter accompanied it, but there was a supernatural compulsion that drew you to Rome. It wasn't nearly as strong for you as some of the others that were brought here, but it was strong enough to bring you to Rome on this night. You knew at once that you would have to pack your things and leave at some impossibly inconvenient moment. For of course, Bianca Dispenser was once Giulietta de Florence. Bianca, go ahead and describe for us what she and her gentleman company are wearing this evening, and what she had been doing in the weeks leading up to this summons.
Well, Bianca, being the chief harpy of Naples, um, is constantly busy. She was in her Elysium, speaking with her foes and perhaps her friends, conversing about the subjects of Naples at the time, when she got this very odd feeling come about her. And it was very strange, very familiar in a way as well. And at first, when she had gotten this feeling, there was a part of her that wanted to fight against it. She didn't want to leave Naples, but the urge was strong, and she conferred with her husband and ghoul, Robert, and they decided to make the journey to Rome to see what this summons was about. And as she appears from the shadows and the darkness, it seems she has a solid step in mind as she steps forward, and she has this grace and beauty about her, and adorned on her is this beautiful gown of green, this vibrant green silk. Her dark hair is down, and it is long and straight. Her lips are almost a ruby red shade, and her eyes are dark and looming as she stares forward, her arm linked with her ghoul. But to anyone else, it would appear her husband, as she walks forward towards her destination. We can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. The man in your company is Robert Dispenser III, as he's known now, the Earl of Gloucester. He appears as a tall and powerful man in his early 30s, with dark hair and a carefully trimmed beard. Looking and carrying himself like every inch English nobility, Robert is genteel but not timid, reserved but not shy. He has a well-developed frame from an active lifestyle, and usually dresses in finery befitting an earl of his station, as he is tonight, draped in an ermine mantle and accoutred in golden jewelry. He is almost always seen, as he is tonight, in the company of his beloved wife Bianca. He looks around the fog, thick streets of Rome, interested, but not asking too many questions about where you were going or why. What have you told Robert about your journey, Bianca?
She has probably told him that the feeling she has gotten from this summons is one that she believes is from her past. She's not quite sure, but she does warn him to be mindful of this. It is Cainite in nature, and she does have a protective side over him. But she does tell him that she does believe it's from her past, and she does mention something to do with the Camarilla. Nothing more than that, for she isn't quite sure what this summons regards as of right now.
And Robert is indeed very protective of you this evening. Your small, delicate hand clasped in his big, strong embrace as he escorts you along the streets, his rain-slick boots making that steady noise as he walks along the cobblestones leading up to the great manse. And as Robert and Bianca approach the manse in the distance atop the Palatine Hill in Rome, from an adjoining street, coming from a different direction, we see another pair emerge out of the fog. This pair we would recognize quite well and right away, as we see Diego Vasquez de Sevilla in the company of his manservant emerge into the Roman night. Diego, you were called from all the way in Spain, from your city, with, there was no note, but there was a supernatural compulsion that was irresistible. The call to journey to Rome. You knew intuitively where you were being summoned, and you know that to be summoned in such a way, it must be someone very powerful who has drawn you here. It was, as I said, for the others, at an impossibly inconvenient moment. You had so much to do in Seville, being prince of that city. And yet, you must come. You must go. Go ahead and describe what we're seeing as Diego and his companion emerge into the Roman streets, and what he had been doing in the weeks leading up to this moment.
Both he and his manservant are decked rather inconspicuously in black homespun clothing, each of them wearing a simple black cloak to keep out the wetness of the mists. Diego has the hood of his cloak drawn up to hide his features, in case he's recognized even here. But at his belt he's wearing an elegant rapier, and at his other hip a rather long curved stiletto. Despite his simple appearance, he walks with an air of nobility that is very hard for him to hide, having been cultivated over the past 2 centuries.
And your companion... Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Your companion glances at you in the night air, and he whispers as he leans in close to you.
And where did you say that we're headed, Master?
Do you remember the name I spoke on the night I was called?
Ah, yes, of course. But I do not understand. How did you know to come here?
He has powers even I cannot understand.
And that seems to unnerve Alfonso as he falls silent. Okay, go ahead and continue.
Diego thinks back on the summoning. He had been sitting at court having a lively discussion with one of the Ventru Harpies, when suddenly the compulsion struck him. Alfonso at his side looked at him with concern as Diego said one word. Hardestadt.
And that is exactly what has brought you here tonight. The camera shifts as we see Alfonso Cordon, your scholar and companion ever since you journeyed to Seville. Alfonso is a Spaniard who appears to be in his early 50s, both his face and skull completely clean-shaven, his wrinkled face and larger nose being the characteristics that stand out on a very expressive face. He typically wears the sort of clothing usually attributed to the servile class, but always immaculate and always hand-tailored. Tonight, dressed much more obsequiously, as the two of you mean to keep a low profile. When he speaks, he does so with the kind of smooth practice of a master diplomat. And you know, of course, that his sharp mind and education become obvious after conversing with Alfonso for only a minute or two. As the two of you walk along the streets of Rome and emerge into the top of the Palatine Hill, we see you converge as this group is gathering before the great iron manse and the gate that remains shut. The camera pans away to the last quarter of the street, the third direction, from which, almost by providence, all of you have gathered here at precisely the exact moment, showing the power and the precision of this summoning that has drawn you here. We see 2 figures emerging out of the fog, one very tall and powerful built, and the other lean and muscled like a whipcord. As they come walking out of the fog, we see Germain de Gascoigne and his companion Matteo. Germain, you were summoned here from across in Europe You could have been anywhere in Europe at the time of the summoning, and indeed, we're interested to know where. But wherever you were, for you are a wanderer by nature, your only companion being your faithful crusader Matteo, you were compelled to go back to Rome, a city you had avoided ever since your embrace. You have never been back to Rome since becoming a vampire, and you dreaded the night when you would eventually come here. And it was with a certainty when you were summoned by this compulsion, you knew where to go. You knew you would be back in the shadow of St. Peter's Basilica, astride the river Tiber. The last time you were here, you were but a mortal priest in service of the Inquisition, and now you are something far darker. Gehrman, go ahead and describe what we're seeing as you and Matteo emerge out of the fog, and what you had been doing and where you were in the weeks leading up to the summoning.
As Gehrman emerges from the fog, his cloak whipping around behind him, his heavy boot steps are echoing throughout the empty streets as he makes his way to his destination. He seems to be wearing a black tunic with long sleeves, embroidered with gray filigree of floral design. It would seem French in nature. Gehrman de Gascoigne is followed by his loyal companion, Matteo. They have just returned from France, where they have been on a mission of rooting out a local plot by the Sabbat, and this summons is very what's the word? Inconvenient. But he makes his way. He makes his way to where he is summoned, for he was sworn to, and he is honor bound. And something, maybe more so, drawing him here. He tells Matteo it's Camarilla business, and he is honor bound to go. But Matteo seems irritated nonetheless.
Indeed he is. At your side, lean and lanky as a wolf, with that is always after the search of prey. We see Matteo, the ghoul condottiero, the soldier you had met in the Red Lamb so many nights ago. Your shared past has brought you together as companions, as we see the years have affected Matteo, appearing perhaps in his early 30s now, with a full beard and jaw-length hair. He looks all at once both silent and intimidating at your side. The lines of stress have etched their way into his face, with a darkness beneath his eyes from one who sleeps little. Lean and muscled, he moves with the stalking grace of a hunting cat, typically seen wearing the fashions of Italy. Yet tonight he is wearing French, in an unadorned and practical manner. The butt handles of a pair of twin pistols can be seen glimpsed beneath his cloak, along with the hilt of his well-worn sword at his side. Matteo walks alongside you, Gehrman, with his cloak swirling around his boots, without complaint, silent, and always vigilant on the lookout for danger. Yet even he breaks his silence this evening as the two of you ascend the Palatine Hill and walk the rain-slick cobblestone streets.
My lord, this summoning is very unusual.
Indeed. He speaks as he begins to slow his pace. Yet we must go all the same.
Do you think perhaps it is the Founders?
I would know no other that has the power to summon me.
Matteo nods grimly and continues on, and it is here as the camera moves towards the gates of this imposing manse atop the Palatine Hill. We see the group converge together, united once more after over 200 years of being apart. I'll turn the scene over to the four of you as we see the group converge together and stand for a moment outside this closed gate, waiting for whatever is to come.
As Valentino sees this woman approach with a man in tow, a sinister grin would have appeared, as he would not immediately recognize this woman. Well, good evening, my lady. What a lovely sight at this dreary hour. I mean, of course, a happy couple.
As Julieta, or should I say Bianca, approaches, and she takes in the sight of Valentino after all these years, somewhat of a beguiled smirk crosses her lips, and she closes the gap between them. And when she speaks, the familiar tone of her voice is probably what will hit Valentino at first. But even so, her words, as she says, "Oh, my favorite Casanova."
Valentino's eyes widen as he hears the familiar words and the tone of voice. Julieta?
She smirks somewhat. Somewhat of a tiny laugh escapes her lips as she looks on to Valentino. "Do I really look that different, Valentino?"
A smile appears on his face as he comes forward for an embrace. "It's good to see you after so long."
Robert stiffens as the other man approaches you for an embrace.
Julieta gives him somewhat of a quick, sly look at Robert, reassuring him that she is just fine in the company of this man, and she embraces him as well, giving him a tender hug before slipping away from him. It is good to see you, Valentino.
And who is this fine gentleman?
This is my husband, Robert.
Robert Dispenser III.
He bows at the waist and says no more, looking at you with the kind of elevated disinterest that you're so used to the nobility showing you.
Valentino de Valle. Pleasure to meet you.
Robert gives a slight nod. He's not dismissive of you. He's not even rude, but you get the opinion that he's certainly nobility. The way he is, even just standing there, he is very used to carrying himself as though he's above others.
Valentino would smirk at this, recognizing this.
Don't mention poor Gabrin.
The knifeman behind you says as he toys with the blade in his hands.
Apologize, my friend. This is my faithful companion, Gabrin.
It is all right, master. I'm quite happy to be ignored, especially in the presence of such a lovely lady.
Gabrin gives a smile, which Robert scowls at.
Julieta would look to Gabrin and kind of give him somewhat of a side nod with a smirk. "Sir?"
The camera pans to Diego and Gehrman.
Gehrman quickens his pace when he sees figures. He is eager to find out the business of tonight's venture, but upon examining those who have already gathered, a slight smile appears on his face from underneath his hood. He quickly walks up. Did you remember your left foot, sir? As he pulls back his hood, revealing this very old and scarred man that seems so familiar to them.
Valentino, at hearing this, would turn to face the man, immediately remembering Gehrman's words as they departed. And a large smile would appear on his face. I've done more than that, old friend. Perhaps you might even find me a challenge now. How have you been?
A smile rakes over Gehrman's face. It is good to hear. I have been well.
Mateo gives a nod and greeting to the rest of you. Of course, being the only companion that has accompanied the others tonight that you would recognize, as he shared in some of the events that you went through so long ago. But characteristic of Mateo, he does not say anything, allowing Gehrman to speak.
Valentina would give Mateo a nod. Mateo?
My lord. Mateo speaks up. In the dark, fog-shrouded streets of Rome, you see the years have not been kind to Mateo. The last you saw the young soldier, he had been in his early, perhaps even mid-20s, clean-shaven and bright-eyed with optimism. Really a far cry from the dark man that stands before you.
Gehrman steps forward, now whipping his cloak back onto his right shoulder as he extends a hand to the lady. This revealing of his cloak flashes the gleam in the moonlight of what looks to be an old French falchion at his side, holstered. He extends a hand to the lady that he is unfamiliar with, and in an attempt to take her hand and do a slight bow. This is a little strange, as if it shows a little more etiquette than Gehrman is usually known for.
Julietta would take his hand, and her eyes would slightly monitor over his weapons, but eventually her dark hues would reach his own, and she would give him somewhat of a kind smile as they too embraced. And rather quickly in a manner, she would speak up and say, the man who killed an elder, or should I say, somewhat killed an elder. Is that what they say about you still, Gehrman?
Gehrman quickly looks up and is bewitched a little bit by this statement. He does not recognize this girl. And after a moment's pause, after looking you over, he looks towards Valentino. Julietta?
Valentino nods at the smile.
He smiles back and looks towards the lady. They call me many things these nights, but it is good to see you again, even if you have changed. He kind of lets out a small chuckle.
Haven't we all? A voice cuts through the darkness as two more figures emerge from the mist.
The camera pans to see Diego and his unknown companion walking with him as they emerge out of the darkness.
Diego pulls back the hood of his cloak, and it's clear the years have been very kind to him. His once swarthy olive-colored skin has dulled to a pale sheen that makes him look almost lustrous even in this light, and his eyes flash almost dangerously with the torchlight around them.
Diego, or should I say, my lord, I've heard tales of your exploits in Sevilla. He comes forward to grasp Diego's forearm in an embrace.
Diego rests it back. We've all been very busy, it seems. Bianca,
Gehrman.
he nods to her.
Julietta, or should I say Bianca, she would immediately turn as Diego encounters the three of them. And of course, out of the three of them, she immediately would take a quick step to the side and embrace him with a gracious hug. She only recently, it feels, had last seen him in Spain when he had invited her there for a time. And as she pulls back and looks at him, it is very good to see him. She has always stayed closest to him out of them all, but she does find it rather refreshing to see everyone together once again, even though it's under these very strange circumstances. But after she pulls away, she does look back to the other two, speaking up kindly. Yes, my new name is Bianca. I do hope you can honor that.
I'm sure I can remember that.
Oh, how very rude of me. Everyone, I'd like you to meet my ghoul, Alfonso, a very old friend.
Alfonso, visibly the eldest man here, although everyone knows that to not be true, bows at the waist and greets everyone with a smile.
Hello, everyone. I am very happy to be in your company, and know all such esteemed Canaanites as yourselves.
Clearly very smooth and practiced in greeting and dealing with other vampires, he makes his statement and then falls silent, as a good ghoul should.
But I interrupted your conversation. Please, continue.
Julietta would speak up at this, looking at the others. Well, I'm sure we were all just about wondering why we were summoned here. Do you have any ideas, Prince Diego?
If a Canaanite could blush, you're pretty sure that Diego gets close. I think it's hard to stat, he says. Though for what purpose, I cannot say.
Gammon seems to be walking away from the group now, his eyes fixed on the building next to them, as he mutters something under his breath. It is this building here.
What do you see?
Of course, Gehrman is standing before the great manse that is before you all with the high iron gate.
Here, he points to the gate. Regia sanguine, regia in veritatem est. It means to rule through blood, is to rule in truth. He looks towards Valentino. Clan Ventru, yes?
Valentino is silent, but he looks past him at the gate in the building. I heard rumors of Hardstadt's fate being destroyed. Do you think it is possible? Do you think it is possible that this is an imposter?
No. Gehrman speaks up as he turns back to the group. I would not believe Hardstadt's destruction. Many things would change quickly if it had been true.
I think that Raphael would have told me something like that.
Camera pans to Bianca to see what she is doing.
Bianca is silent for the moment. She's taking in what the others are saying, kind of dissecting it in her own mind. But for now, she has kind of stepped back and again has taken Robert's arm, kind of soothingly in manner, as she knows that it is probably not uncomfortable for him, but he does worry about her. And there are, 3 strapping men in front of them at this point. So she kind of eases his worries.
And indeed, the 4 of you had heard rumor of Hardestadt's destruction during the Anarch Revolt. But Having known him personally, it seems impossible to imagine that a venture of such age and potency could be toppled by the upstarts of the Anarch Revolt. As the four of you peer through the gates, the grounds will note that the manse appears to have been recently renovated, and the ironwork itself certainly looks new. The grounds are absolutely immaculate, dotted with small topiaries here and there. There's also a small fountain carved into the shape of a cupid with slender wings and barbed arrows. He burbles quietly into its basin off to the side. The path from the gate to the house is graveled, and the lawn to either side is smooth enough to serve as a green for croquet or bocce. You can see broad steps leading up to the heavy wooden front doors of the mansions, each of which has a heavy iron ring set into it. The windows, as you look up, are all curtained, and faint silhouettes can be seen pacing to and fro from behind them, but there is very little illumination in the house itself. You get the impression that this house is guarded, as glimpses of men in the shadow on the grounds itself, although always just out of your sight, can be seen, and the upper floor is entirely dark. It is as if the beings dwelling in the manse need no light in order to see, or if they prefer blindness.
Gehrman quickly turns back to Diego this time and does a low bow. My apologies, my lord. It is easy to forget myself in such company of a prince.
Pish posh, he says. I am not your prince. As far as I'm concerned, we're all equals here.
He does a very low bow, nonetheless, and then he picks himself up and straightens. Shall we go and see the Lord?
Valentino nods and gives a slight push to the gate to see if it will even open.
The gate does not open. As you push on it, it seems quite locked, although the summoning is still strong in all four of you. And almost on cue, as soon as you push the gate, a short, thin man wearing black livery will come to open the gates, walking in your direction from out of the shadows. He's carrying a lantern light, which is the first thing you see coming out of the darkness of the grounds, and then you see him approach the gates. He opens it from within, and the invitation will be reinforced by a sudden emphasis from the summoning in all four of you. The servant does not speak, other than to offer the invitation with a wordless gesture of his hand and a low bow at the waist to formally welcome you to the house.
Valentino leads the way and follows on the path.
And Grabrin follows after you, smirking at the servant as he stalks past with you.
Julieta would eye the servant as well for a moment, but then look again forward, following Valentino with Robert beside her.
Robert tightens his embrace on your arm, his elbow hooked into yours. He takes no note of the servant walking past. The camera pans to where Diego and Gehrman stand.
Gehrman will do a bow as Bianca passes, and then he'll look towards Mateo, and then give a quick jerk of his head to follow after Gehrman.
Mateo wordlessly stalks after you. His hand, however, remains on the butt of his sword.
Master,
Your companion speaks up, Diego, as Alfonso looks kind of leering at the house before you.
I do not like this place.
Make no mistake, we are entering great danger. You must keep your wits about you, my friend.
Alfonso nods, but he goes on to say,
I see, using the powers of your blood, that there are many men on the upper floor. Many more in the shadows of these grounds. They are armed. Crossbows, it seems. Wooden bolts.
Should it come to blows, I will use all the powers at my disposal to protect you. In the
Oh.
meantime, let's head inside, shall we?
Of course, Master.
Alfonso bows at the waist and seems very surprised that you had expressed interest in his safety, although you have done so on many occasions. He follows after you should you head inside.
He does indeed head inside, giving the servant a slight bow.
The servant shuts the gate behind the four of you, and as you approach the manse door, he locks the gates and silently approaches with his setting the lantern down outside the manse. The massive doors swing open at his lightest touch, and he steps back to allow the four of you inside. Once you have filtered inside, you're escorted into the dimly lit drawing room as we change scene. The furnishings inside this manse are rich but not ostentatious, and the decoration is classical in its motif. As you are guided into the drawing room, where there is many pieces of furniture to sit upon, clearly a place meant for waiting, you see Greek vases and Koros statues abound, and the paintings adorning the walls all depict scenes from Adriatic mythology. Diego, as you pass by, on one wall, Laocoon struggles in the serpent's coils, and opposite him, Valentino, you see Prometheus writhing as the eagle tears at his liver. The furniture consists of low tables and couches with overstuffed black and gray silk cushions. You will be invited to seat yourselves by your escort as he motions to the couches with a hand by the first servant, and then he turns to leave the room.
Valentino finds a couch to sit down and lounge on, spreading his arms back across the tall edges of it, relaxing back. What have we to fear? It's not as though we've been invited to any parties in the past that ended poorly.
Diego chuckles darkly despite himself.
Your humor has not improved over the years.
Not everything is a trap, my friend. Even as Valentino finishes this sentence, he scans the room, himself looking for exits and traps.
Indeed, it seems to be a relatively well-furnished home. And as the four of you stand there, the camera pans briefly to Bianca, where she enters in last with Robert. Robert leans in and looks around, whispering to her,
Your host has very good taste, my love.
So you noticed as well.
Bianca smiles mildly. She would look about the small room they were led to. Is there any art on the walls?
absolutely, all of the art seems to be from ancient Greek mythology.
Still, I am concerned. This does not seem Hardestad's style, does it? He seems more a man of swords and shields, if you understand my meaning.
After 200 years, who is to say who is any of our style?
He shrugs. That is true, I suppose.
At this point, another servant, dressed identically in black to the first, enters the room. He walks wordlessly to the center of the room, holding a silver tray. On the tray are a number of crystal glasses. There are 6 that you can see. Oh, I'm sorry, 5. And a hand-cut crystal decanter full of blood. Even without the stopper pulled, all 4 of you can smell the blood inside. It is rich and potent and very decadent in its aroma. The servant wordlessly pours 4 glasses for you, leaving the 5th empty upon the tray, and offers a glass to each of you in turn.
Gammon will accept the glass from the servant while continuing to peer around at the strange house.
Bianca would accept her glass graciously as well, kind of giving Robert an inquisitive look before looking back to the art pieces.
Diego accepts the glass graciously with a nod.
Lastly, the servant comes to hand a glass to you, Valentino.
Valentino stands up. Has everyone already had a drink?
I don't believe anyone's taken a drink.
Valentino stands up abruptly and yells, "Do not drink it. This is the blood of a vampire. Someone means to bond us."
Forgive me, my lord.
The servant bows at the waist, to his credit, actually keeping the tray perfectly level as he does so.
Your host would never be so crass as to serve the vitae one still living who might seek to bond you. It is a mere aperitif, a welcoming gift for your arrival. This evening we have a very potent and rich bouquet of a Cainite of the 6th generation, a rare elder treat. But, of course, the one who this blood belonged to is no longer in existence. My lord would never seek to insult the 4 of you.
It would do you well to have your lord greet us. 'Tis rude to keep us waiting.
Certainly, my lord. After a very short time, we are but notifying the lord of your arrival, and we will be escorting you to the meeting very soon.
Valentino is visibly on edge now. He's no longer sitting relaxed.
Please enjoy the refreshments. They are for your pleasure alone. If you wish a refill of your glass, I shall be here.
The servant straightens up, and he, as if joining the furniture, steps back to one corner of the shadowy room where the candelabra flicker, and stands there silently with the tray in hand, holding the decanter of blood and also the one last empty glass that he did not serve.
Diego notices this with some interest. "Who is the 5th guest?" he asks.
The servant gives a faint smile.
We had expecting one other. It seems as though they will not be here.
"Mariana?" he asks with a quirked eyebrow.
The servant smiles but does not answer.
Good luck with that one.
If she even still walks.
And speaking of blood, this is a perfect time to determine your blood pools for the evening. So everyone go ahead and roll a 1d10, and I will roll a 1d10 and in secret and add that variable to your blood pool. There's Daniels. One moment. Gehrman, you in particular have been neglecting your feeding, and the aroma from the glass is almost irresistible as you hold it in your hand and it wafts under your nose. It's almost erotic in the way it calls to you.
After hearing the speech from the servant serving them, he looks down to the glass with a lustful eye, although trying to show some sort of restraint in the presence of his companions. He still elongates his jaw as wide as it will go and chucks back the glass in one swift motion.
The blood is rich and delicious, and you immediately regret drinking it so quickly.
Gehrman will motion to the servant. Another, if you will.
The servant bows and wordlessly moves across the room to lift the decanter to your glass and daintily pour it, very gently as though he were handling a very precious substance, filling your glass before setting the decanter back upon the silver platter and withdrawing.
This time Gehrman is going to be taking his time, knowing the vintage of this blood that he's drinking, and he will casually begin to sip as he finds a seat in the hall.
All right, and as the four of you await word from the staff in the house, I'll go ahead and turn the scene over to you for any dialogue you wish to engage in.
I think that was a mistake, my friend. I do not trust the words of a man I do not know when it comes to the blood of Canaanites.
You were cautious. I admire that. I cannot fault you for that, but I do not expect our hosts to be ill-willed.
And I should note, however, that as the four of you sit there with your refreshments, the ghouls in a company to you, all the way from very reserved Robert to the lascivious eye of Gabrine, are all looking at the glasses in your hands, for they themselves have acquired a taste for Canaanite blood. And though none of them admit it, you can all feel their eyes upon the blood in your hand, lustfully watching.
Almost unbelievably, Diego will hand the glass over to Alfonso. Take a taste, my friend.
Ah, my lord, Master, I could not. You're so very kind.
He falls all over himself, trying to refuse, and yet his hand takes the glass from you, and he takes a deep sip from the blood. His eyes widen.
When did you become so subservient? I remember the Alfonso that used to challenge me at every turn.
Forgive me, Master, this is delicious.
Takes another drink.
I only wish to show proper protocol before these other Canaanites. I do not wish to challenge you so openly. It's delicious.
And he goes to drink more.
He'll tap him on the nose. That's enough.
Of course, Master.
And he hands the glass back to you.
As for challenging me, these Canaanites are my friends. Challenge away. They will appreciate your courage.
Alfonso smiles.
Indeed I will, Master.
Gehrman will stand, taking the fifth glass, ushering the servant to pour and fill up the fifth.
The servant hesitates, but he does so, as though he had not been expecting this.
Gehrman will take a small sip from the fifth glass, and then he'll motion, Mateo, you fought for the Camarilla as much as any of us here.
Mateo stands there with his hand upon his sword, ramrod straight attention behind you where he'd been sitting, and he looks, his eyes shifting in your direction, And despite his icy stoicism, you can see the longing in his eyes as he stares at the glass in your hand, revealing his desire for it in only the look in his eyes. Before he breaks his sentry and he moves towards you to wordlessly take the glass and give you a slight nod in gratitude. And then, in sharp contrast to his stoicism before, Mateo suddenly opens his mouth and guzzles the blood hungrily.
It is very good, my lord.
Indeed.
Diego laughs at this. Forgive me if I seem too forward, German, but of all of the ghouls in this room, I would think that Mateo was the most eligible for the embrace. Why have you not given it to him?
A quick snap of the head towards Diego. That is not your concern.
And he smirks, as if knowing this. It looks like he might have been even testing you.
And as Diego smirks, so too does Alfonso, a smile creeping into his face as he licks the residue of blood from his lips.
Seeking to break the tension between his companions, Valentino speaks up to Gehrman. How have you been spending these years, Gehrman? I have not had a chance to see you or hear of your exploits.
Dissuading the conversation, Gehrman seems to relax as he returns his gaze towards Vukar. We have been on the path following the Sabbat. We have just recently returned from France. Seems there is more goings-on at the Sabbat in that location, and we, as he motions between him and Mateo, have been working to uncover it.
I've had very little dealings with these Sabbat since their inception. What make you of them?
They are the biggest threat the Camarilla possesses right now. These anarchs are but children compared to the sort.
I see.
They are dangerous. They are threatening. But nothing that the Camarilla can't overcome together, you understand.
I have no doubt that many of them met a terrible end at the edge of your blade.
Many more yet still to come, if our time is required.
Valentino, I think you're the only one I have not seen in the past 2 centuries. What have you been up to?
At this, Valentino's eyes narrow slightly. Just business.
I see you have developed a very true penchant for secrecy.
Valentino doesn't reply to this, but he does finally take a seat again and attempt to relax. Though he does not look very relaxed as he sits there.
And you notice, the three of you, that Bianca has actually set her blood down as she is whispering to her ghoul Robert, or rather her husband as she introduced him, as he is speaking to her in hushed tones as well. They seem to content to keep their own company, as they have not made effort to join the conversation.
Come, as he motions to the lady. Julieta, please regale us the tales of your story.
Bianca would look to Gehrman after a moment. It is Bianca, Gehrman.
A slight shock over his face is quickly masked with a bow. My apologies, Bianca.
Bianca would eye Gehrman for a moment. And as for my story, well, I have nothing quite as interesting compared to all of you. I can assure you of that.
What about the old man? As he motions to him, taking another sip from his glass. Where did you acquire this one?
Robert narrows his eyes at you, Gehrman.
We were married many years ago,
He speaks up with surprising impudence for a ghoul.
Bianca would speak up after a moment. Yes, Robert and I met a very long time ago, Gehrman, and I did not acquire him. He acquired me. She muses and kind of looks up to Robert reassuringly.
Robert is still staring at Gehrman, although he has taken to taking your hand into his own, Bianca.
Gehrman's eyes will drift towards Robert now, locking eyes with him, staring at him and his brow furrowing.
Robert actually visibly withers under the gaze of Gehrman. You've never seen Robert cowed before, Julia or Bianca, but he breaks his stare from Gehrman. He looks away.
Taking another sip from Gehrman's glass, he'll slowly turn back and resume his seat.
It's actually at this precise moment that a line of servants enter the room. They're led by the man who opened the gate, and he clears his throat.
Good evening, everyone. Your hosts are ready to receive you.
And as he says this, two of the other servants behind him move to flank him, and they reach down to roll back the rich Persian rug on the floor. They reveal the flagstone underneath with a ring set in it. Two more servants move to lift the stone with the kind of strength only ghouls could muster as the heavy masonry pulls out of the floor, revealing a darkness below and a cold, cool draft. One of these servants step forward down into the darkness, beckoning the others to follow him. You see that there are, after a short drop, stairs which lead into the earth. And as the man beckons to you, the first servant who had originally led you into the house bows graciously.
Your hosts ask that your guests remain here.
The other ghouls, the ghouls that accompany the Lambs of Isaac this evening, each of them in turn look nervously to their master, clearly not liking this news that they're to be left behind.
Valentino looks to Gabrine and gives him a look that in times past have meant to be on the lookout and to be ready. But he does not say anything.
Gabrine rolls his shoulder in a shrug, looking at you as if to say, what choice do we have?
Finishing his glass, Gehrman will stand and set it upon a small table nearby. He'll then walk over to Matteo and clasp a hand on his shoulder firmly, and not saying anything, but giving him a look that seems to portray everything he wants to say to Matteo.
Matteo meets your gaze and nods after a moment.
I will wait for you, my lord.
A brief smile wraps over Gehrman's face as he taps his shoulder again.
Matteo steps back, his hand upon his sword, standing straight and at attention. Robert has noticeably tightened his arm around yours, Bianca. He doesn't seem eager to let you go. He's staring at the dark hole in the floor that the servants have opened.
Sort of within Bianca, she kind of seizes for a moment, for she does remember the last time they were to leave their servants and companions behind. And it's not a very fond memory, but she garners her composure and kind of sighs, turning lightly back to Robert. Well, this is how the elite like to do these things, unfortunately, she says, kind of disappointedly in manner, for she does wish she could take him. But eventually she leans up and gives him a gentle kiss to his cheek and kind of squeezes his hand within her own, trying to reassure him. I will be safe, I promise. Wait for me here.
I will, my love.
And he reaches up to kiss your forehead. Gabrine is watching them watching Bianca and Robert with a sly smile.
Valentino speaks up. Don't worry, old friend. We'll take care of dear Bianca. He gives an evil smile to Robert. It was a pleasure to meet you, Reginald.
Robert shoots a glance at Valentino, but he does not rise to the bait, to his credit.
I will wait for you here, my love.
He pats your hand, Bianca.
Bianca gives him a somewhat serene but serious glance. She wishes he could come, but she also wants to, reassure him that she can take care of herself, which to some degree he, must know about her. So after a moment, she squeezes his hand one last time and then turns away, following the others.
All right, so everyone's departing.
Diego, gives Alfonso a knowing glance. He's long ago left him to his own devices, so he wouldn't feel too uncomfortable being left alone.
Alfonso indeed does not look uncomfortable being left alone. He merely gives you a smile and says to you in Spanish,
I think I will see if they have a library here.
That's the Alfonso I remember.
His smile widens into something resembling something that would have been sinister to anyone else, but to you is a familiar look.
Satisfied, Diego will follow.
And as the Lambs of Isaac descend into the cold earth, led by the ghouls in black livery, we will change our scene. The four of you are led by the unsmiling ghouls in black livery down narrow, niter-encrusted steps into the catacombs that burrow and twist for what seems to be hundreds of miles beneath Rome. The ghoul leading the way, a middle-aged man who had, up until now, not said a word. He has a hatchet face and spider-like hands, has obviously been taught the rudiments of thaumaturgy. In his hands dance flames barely bright enough to illuminate the way. It is shocking and surprising, his command of blood magic, given he is only a ghoul. Clearly, his master, or mistress, must be potent indeed. The ghouls seem sure-footed on the slippery stairs, given the impression that they have been here many times before. As they escort you through a dizzying series of twists and turns with the clear intent of completely disorienting you, they make no attempt to mark a trail, politely but firmly ushering the four of you along. In the depths, the only sound that can be heard is the snare drum drip of water onto stone. These ghouls continue to walk along despite the noises that echo throughout the dark tunnels. Eventually, as you pass through the darkness, the camera is going to shift to each of you in turn to see how the Lambs of Isaac are taking in this strange and secret passage that smells like bones and dust and old death.
Valentino is very anxious, given that it appears this ghoul knows something occult, with his thoughts returning to Mistress Van Shawn and his immense distrust and dislike for the Tremere because of her. So he is scanning everywhere he can. His paranoia growing.
Diego looks somewhat downcast. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, go ahead. I was just spurring you guys to go on.
Yeah, Diego's face looks somewhat downcast. This place reminds him so much of memories of that monastery of St. Timothy. He feels a great swelling of sadness in his breast. He has stayed away from catacombs ever since that night.
Gammon, it seems, has shifted his cloak to his left side, revealing his sword, as if it were making it easier for a quick draw in case he is in need of it. He seems distrustful of these men and their play with magic. He has had little encounter with thaumaturgy itself, but he knows it to be the staple of the Tremere, and he holds no love for the Tremere.
Bianca is steadily walking behind Valentino at this point. And she will be using her auspex to heighten her senses to see if she can pick up on anything as they descend into this dark hole.
As you heighten your senses, Bianca, immediately the darkness seems a bit brighter and you can see and smell things that would have gone unnoticed by even the sharpest vampiric senses. You can smell that there is very old death in these tunnels. The bones here are ancient, maybe perhaps even thousands of years old.
Once she picks up on the smell, she kind of eases her way back a few steps alongside Diego. A rather almost disgusted-like expression upon her face. Ugh. The scent of death is strong in this place.
Oh, I think you might be muted, Scott.
Indeed, it brings back bad memories.
All right, so does everyone fall silent as you're escorted through the tunnels?
I think so.
Yes, Gehrman will look back towards Diego and Bianca, to regard their their speech, but he will not speak. He just seems content on moving forward.
Diego will whisper to Bianca in Spanish, "They're trying to confuse us."
Bianca would somewhat raise a brow, but she doesn't turn to Diego as he speaks, but she does speak to him as she looks forward, and she speaks in Spanish. What do you mean?
The way they're taking is very roundabout. They don't want us to know how to get back.
As Diego says this, a flutter kind of erupts in the chest cavity of Bianca, but after a moment, she gains control of herself once more, and she doesn't respond to what Diego says, but she does note it as she keeps her senses heightened and just awaits for the end of wherever they are going.
And as the Lambs of Isaac are led along in the darkness, we're going to fade out and change scene.
Valentino would say one last thing. Just he wouldn't know what they're saying behind him, but he would perhaps sense the disquiet in the group. Under no circumstances should we be split up, as we were in Giovanni's manner. We stay together.
Bianca would nod at Valentino's words if he was looking towards the others, but she says nothing else.
Diego, too, nods his assent.
Gammon will nod in agreement with the group as he continues forward. This time, hand is holstered on his sword.
And as you walk on into darkness, we change scene. Eventually, the characters find themselves led into a larger chamber as the Lambs of Isaac are filtered into this, well, somewhat brightly lit underground chamber, which actually flies away upwards in a vaulted ceiling. It is lit with sconced torches. Closer examination of the brands burning so brightly along the walls reveal that they are not wood but bone. Each torch a femur that has somehow been conjured into flame. The walls themselves are gray stone, honeycombed with beds for the beloved dead. Skulls, spines, ribs, and knuckle bones are stacked neatly in the corners of the room, each bone sorted with each. In the center of the room, which immediately commands your attention, is a round black marble table with a slate top. Intricately carved chairs sit around the table as though they were thrones. Seated at the table are the founders, those lords and ladies of the Camarilla whose will has drawn you here, and you immediately recognize all 7 of them. Representatives of their clan, they do not look pleased. With an unspoken command from Hardestat, who sits at the head of the table, as only he could find the head of a table at a round table, the ghouls are dismissed, and the Lambs of Isaac are left in the imposing presence of their elders. The founders sit around the table, staring with weary contempt. It would appear as if the centuries have not been kind to them. Immediately, the 4 of you can see that they have gained power and seen their dream of the Camarilla come to fruition, but their power apparently came at great cost, and the dream was realized in debased and bastardized form with the rise of the Sabbat, the Anarch Revolt, and many other clans remaining independent. As the 4 of you enter the room, it's actually Mistress Fanchon who sits to the right of Hardestat, who speaks up. She immediately smiles to the 4 of you as you enter the room. Actually, she, to your surprise, rises from her seat to greet you.
How pleasant it is to see you all again.
The camera pans to the four lambs of Isaac as they enter the vast underground chamber.
Valentino, recognizing that he must show reverence to his elders, he nods to Mistress Finchon, but he barely contains a grimace at the sight of her.
I can, with no lies, say the same, Diego says. Your camarilla has been a rousing success, especially in my home city of Sevilla.
Indeed. We were quite surprised when Raphael mentioned that you had aspirations towards political office, Diego. But this council received the news with joy. The success in Spain against the hated Sabbat has been going very well, I hear.
And Raphael, across the way, who is nursing a decanter of blood in a glass in his hand, cut for brandy, actually raises his glass in your direction, Diego, and nods, his handsome face, even in these shadows, looking captivating.
I was only inspired by your lessons, my lady.
Mistress Franchon smiles. The camera pans to Julieta. I'm Bianca now.
Bianca steps before the founders, and as Mistress Fanchon speaks, she bows to them. My ladies and lords.
And as you greet her, Mistress Fanchon nods, seemingly speaking for the group for now.
Yes, all of you, not just Diego, have been a rousing success, and the Masquerade has taken hold all across Europe. Our kind have never been safer. It seems that time has borne out our decision not to annihilate you upon your embrace.
And as she says that earns her a black look from Hardestot, who is remaining silent up until now.
I cannot begin to express our gratitude at your contribution to the Camarilla. Your alliance with each other has been an inspiration. Even when you were young, you have fought in the heart of the Maelstrom, prevented the conspirators of Isaac from usurping the position of the Cappadocians. And though those unhappy events did take place despite your best efforts, we feel...
And immediately Hardestot interrupts her, blustering in control of the situation as he typically does. That will be enough, usurper, raising his hand. And Mistress Fanchon looks annoyed for a moment, a flash look across her face as she sits back upon her seat. Hardestot turns to look at the rest of you. As Mistress Fanchon has mentioned, my decision, I will not hide it. I intended to destroy the four of you after your illegal embrace. I make no hide of that fact. I will not obfuscate the meaning of this meeting either, but I will begin by saying I had an error in judgment regarding you during those heady days so long ago. Hardestot smirks. I am glad to see you well after these 2 difficult centuries. Despite the flattery of Fanchon, Camarilla has not been without obstacles, as I'm sure you know, Gehrman. Hardestot motions to you where you stand, Gehrman. You have been on the front lines against these Sabbat villains. What is your estimation of the Camarilla standing in Europe?
Cameron will step forward, being addressed, and he'll do a very low bow to the table of them, and he'll stand up straight. Camarilla is in full control. However, we are being pressed on multiple sides by the Sabbat and now the Anak revolt. The Sabbat are by far the greater threat. The revolt seems childlike in nature. Once the Sabbat are cowed, the revolt will be easily dealt with.
Yes, this first Anarch revolt, which became the Sabbat, spread the false rumor that I had been destroyed. Hardestat smirked. You can clearly see it was mere propaganda. Lies to bring them to their side. This second Anarch revolt, which has taken place in Britain, is under control. I have word from a clanmate there. A very potent clanmate. Prince of London, who assures me that it will be quashed in time. Many of the Sabbat have been driven to that filthy little refuge they're calling the New World. I have been to the New World. It's a swamp, he says dismissively with a wave of his hand. The British colonies there are forming up, certainly, but I prefer business at home. I would like to take this time. Hardestat smooths out over the table, and you can see that he no longer wears his armor as in knights of yore. You can, though he is still, of course, the tall, broad-chested man with an aristocratic bearing that you remember, he is wearing a general's uniform from one of the countless German states, and he is visibly armed, despite his lack of armor. I would not have called the four of you this evening without good reason, and I would like to thank you for answering my summonings. It would appear that those events 2 difficult centuries ago, that everyone had thought to be laid to rest once and for all, have not truly been laid to rest. He allows that to sink in. The camera pans back to the Lambs of Isaac for their reaction.
How do you mean, my lord?
I think he means that the Giovanni have not lain quiet as they promised.
A smirk and a small chuckle comes from Gehrman as he shakes his head, and a scowl rises on his face.
Indeed, you are correct. Allow me to outline the bare bones of the situation, if you will forgive my irony. Hardestat smirks in uncharacteristic humor as Raphael gives a smile as well, surrounded by bones as you are. It would appear a text has been stolen, rather several texts, from the Vatican Library, a work written in a language known as Chaldean. It's a dead language, ancient, long before any of our times. Part of the library of the late lamented Cappadocius. It, as well as many others, was placed at the order of this council in the Vatican stacks for safekeeping after Augustus Giovanni's foul crimes. Hardestat allows a flash of his fangs as he speaks of Augustus Giovanni. At first glance, there would hardly seem to be a worse place to store Cappadocius's manuscripts than in the heart of this eternal city here. The darkest secrets of vampiric existence surrounded by men and women of faith, within easy reach of those servants of the Church and Inquisition who seek to eradicate the kindred. The situation would seem almost comically dangerous, however there is a logic to our madness here. After Augustus's act of diablerie upon his sire, it was unanimously agreed by this council that the contents of Cappadocius's library should be hidden for safekeeping. The safe alternative would have been to destroy the collection incomplete, but it was suggested, Hardestat glances sidelong irritably at Mistress Fanchon, that the knowledge contained within might someday prove to be of use. Still, once agreement to save the books had been reached, all consensus amongst us vanished. I make no pretense otherwise. None of us trust any of the others to merely protect the deadly texts. Hardestat smiles in plain honesty, the kind of honesty you don't typically expect. A neutral storage site was needed. It was von Baren, Plan Nosferatu, and he motions to Joseph von Baren, who is sitting across the table upon his throne in the tattered hood robe rags of a monk that you remember him wearing so long ago. His fashions don't seem to have changed with the centuries. He pointed out the concentrated faith of those dwelling within the Vatican that would serve as a potent barrier against vampiric thieves, whilst more moldering texts of medieval metaphysics would hardly be noticed amidst the piles and stacks that the Vatican already owned. We acquiesced. The transfer was arranged. And through the eras of the Avignon and multiple popes, the manuscripts remained safe. Until now. Hardestat sits back upon his chair. My suspicion of these books, and this is where we go to the grim matter of the tale, contain the keys to Cappadocius's forbidden researches into the nature of Godhead itself. Of course, we all witnessed his folly at the monastery of St. Timothy so many years ago. Yet, after extensive studying of the texts, Mistress Fanchon, and he motions to the Tremere to his side, believes that there is some credibility to it. Furthermore, this theft comes on the heels of other crimes of a similar nature. Mages' libraries in this area have been ransacked. Even the Tremere chantries have been burgled. Churches and monasteries, looted manuscripts, all concerned with a rumored ritual called the Anointing, which, if I'm to understand correctly, supposedly has the power to grant divinity, or more likely demoniac power, to the soul who performs it. Theoretically, the ritual merges the notions, the transubstantiation and the amaranth, essentially allowing the individual performing it to diablerize God himself. We believe this is what Cappadocius had been looking into before his untimely demise. We know not the details of the ritual, only that it failed. Theoretically, however, were he successful, such an individual would then become God after a fashion, and possess even powers to dwarf even that of our father Cain. The ramifications of this possibility, I don't have to stress to you, are terrifying. The camera pans back to the four of you as you take in Hardestat's pontification in this matter, as we look to you for any thoughts or reactions.
What makes you believe it was the Giovanni who took these texts?
The others look rather around the table uncomfortably at Hardestat. You can tell that you've struck a nerve with that question, Diego. Hardestat narrows his eyes. We do not. He says very, very flatly and plainly.
Bianca looks to Diego as he speaks, and then after Hardestat answers, she too speaks up. I do find it quite interesting, Hardestat, that out of the 5 Lambs of Isaac, the one that is missing is that of the Giovanni clan. Mariana, am I correct?
Hardestat nods grimly. Her absence here is indeed disquieting. You can see why we are concerned, Raphael smoothly interjects. Regardless of the identity of the culprit, it would seem that someone wants to follow in Cappadocius's footsteps. The difference being, says von Baren the Nosferatu, Cappadocius was a pacifist. A potent fool, but a passive one. Whoever has stolen this book will, if he discovers a way to perform this ritual, use his newfound powers and act. None of us, not all this council and you combined, could stand against that. The thief must be identified, found and apprehended, and his prizes either locked away or destroyed.
Valentino looks vexed. I had hoped to be done with the Giovanni. It seems that won't be the case.
A return venge strike at them would do me good.
I don't think what they're proposing that we strike against them. Merely look into the matter, am I correct?
I'm sorry, repeat that?
He said he doesn't think that they're proposing that we strike the Giovanni, just look into the matter.
Hardestat nods. That is correct. The understanding we have reached with Clan Giovanni, Hardestat speaks that with disdain, as though he had hoped never to speak it, is an accord which remains intact. However, should we find proof that the Giovanni are behind this theft, we will have every excuse to wipe that foul brood from the earth once and for all.
Just as they supposedly did with their own kin.
Specifically, what would you have us do now, Lord Hardestat?
The task that lays before the four of you is a relatively simple one. The theft took place here in Rome, hence our meeting here in Rome. This is but one of many meeting places this council has. Since the trail of the thief is yet warm, I would ask that the four of you investigate this matter. It is of grave importance. The lot of you have demonstrated, singly and together, over the centuries, your supreme fitness for this task. I trust none of you think to refuse. We have no time to gather another band to do what you are eminently suited to do, especially since the thief has a good head start. Retrieve or destroy the book, it makes no difference. Unmask and destroy the thief, however. Hardestat sits back upon his chair, looking at the rest of the council. I hereby call blood hunt upon him. Do any here gainsay my right? All around the table, no one says anything, but Raphael does lift his glass and take a sip.
As a prince among princes Hardestat, we hear the blood hunt so called.
Hardestat nods grimly.
Gehrman will unsheath his sword and place it upon the ground, kneeling in front of it. I pledge my sword in the service of this blood hunt, and I will see it answered.
The camera pans to Giulietta, or Bianca, forgive me.
Bianca would take in these words carefully. Her mind working overtime at this point as she knits these pieces of information together. But eventually, after somewhat of a silent pause, she gives her solemn nod to Hardestat, meeting his eyes with her own, agreeing to this. But of course, from the beginning of this relationship that she has had with these founders, she has never always been overcompetent in her agreeing to such things. She merely does it because she has no other option. So that kind of is blissfully aware to the others in terms of her not voicing her agreement, but merely nodding with her agreement.
Valentino holds back his wine-red cloak and bows. "Will be done, my lord."
Excellent. The thief's life is yours, the blood hunt is so called. If it turns out to be one of Augustus's progeny, Hardestat gives a smile that is utterly terrifying. The war will be on. At this, Milov across the table of Clan Gangrel smiles, and Adana de Sforza, who you've not seen in many centuries, indeed returns the smile as well, as they seem the most eager to go to war. Your own resources, Hardestat goes on, should be more than sufficient to track down this ravager of libraries. If there are any other questions, he glances back over the four of you.
Do you have any leads at the moment?
None. Though the trail is there, the Nosferatu assure me. Their resources have been bent on keeping the Inquisition away from the vampires of Rome. Being a Cainite in this city is, shall we say, uncomfortable. Upholding the Masquerade is of paramount importance under the shadow of St. Peter's. I hope you can all appreciate our situation.
More than appreciate, my lord.
We will be discreet.
In the name of discretion, would it be possible for us to speak with the Nosferatu?
You have their clan representative here before you. Hardestat motions to Von Baren.
Are there clues? Gehrman now standing, sheathing his sword back at his side, turning his attention to Yosef. Hints, details upon the theft that would lead us in a direction.
From beneath Joseph's black hood, of which you can only see hints of the tattered wreckage of his face, you see him steeple his gnarled claws that he calls hands together.
There is one of my clan in this city I am aware of. They call her Madame Cloaca. And she masquerades as a beggar woman and will often appear if coin or some other luxury is offered. She trades her wares as many of my clan do. Information in this city. Madame Cloaca is more familiar with Rome than I will ever be. It is said.
Joseph gives a fanged, crooked smile from beneath his hood.
That she is from the days of the Roman Empire, and lay for 1,000 years in a mass grave in torpor. Step carefully with Madame Cloaca. Her sanity is not all there, I'm afraid.
It seems an excellent place to begin.
As good as any. But I am to understand that no theft can be done without leaving a trail. The thief will have needed a way out of Rome. Travel for our kind is not easy under the best of circumstances. They will have needed, perhaps, to smuggle the goods. Now, that, were I to give you advice, is where I would suggest you start.
Joseph falls silently, sitting back in his seat, clearly with nothing else to say. And as the four of you are left to ponder this, Hardestat is looking at you impatiently. You know that even though the centuries have kind of smoothed his rough manner a bit, Hardestat is ever impatient, and you get the impression he will dismiss you in a moment unless you have something else to bring up.
Valentina remains silent.
Should we wish to contact you with information? And he lets that hang in the air.
Hardestat pauses to consider for a moment. Return to this manor. I cannot say the rest of this council will still be here, or even myself, but I will be leaving behind a retinue of my faithful servants at this place. They will know how to contact me, and I will summon you accordingly. And of course you know, as Hardestat says that it was indeed him who summoned you here, and you know that he has the power to do so.
Gehrman will bow before Yosef and then to Hardestat, acknowledging them both.
I am looking forward to an encore performance of your skills, Lambs of Isaac.
Hardestat speaks up, giving a faint smile, and that's always a terrible thing to behold when Hardestat smiles. All right, does everyone remain silent?
Yes.
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 And as Hardestat is about to raise his hand to dismiss you, Raphael speaks up.
There is one more matter.
Hardestat frowns, looking over at him. Raphael sits up in his seat, addressing the four of you.
The Giovanni are also present here in Rome. Of course, they are well aware of our suspicions towards them.
No doubt they will be struggling to hide, if indeed they are the thieves, their complicity in this matter.
Giovanni Manor indeed is on this very hill, and I ask that it would be unwise to directly approach them. Tipping them off, if indeed they are the thieves, would not be prudent. Yes?
Well understood.
Gehrman nods.
I speak especially to you, German de Gascoigne. The war against the Giovanni is still off, for now.
Raphael locks eyes with you, Gehrman, knowing well your reputation for violence.
Gehrman straightens as he looks at Raphael, and after a moment does a very quick nod and then looks away.
The Toreador seems satisfied, sitting back in his throne. Very well, Hardestat speaks up. Go. He motions, beckoning with his hand. And may the Lord of Hosts himself have the enlightened self-interest to aid you on your quest. And with that, as the Lambs of Isaac turn to go, the camera fades to dark as we end our scene. And we are at the 2-hour mark, so it's time for our 10-minute break.
Cool. I'll be right back.
Yep.
Me too.
Me three!
And I'm back.
Alright, back.
Welcome back.
And I've returned.
Welcome back.
Who's all here?
I'm here.
Yeah, I think it's just me and Vukar.
So what do you guys think so far?
Really cool. Really anxious about messing around Giovanni again, though.
Right. Considering our reputation.
We all have clan enmity still.
Yeah. I don't know. It's kind of cool to call blood hunt for the very first thing, you know? I wonder who it is.
Old man Hardestot all along.
Daddy's mad.
Yeah, he seems a little upset.
Hmm.
I have returned with healthy soup.
What was that?
I've returned with healthy soup.
Healthy soup.
Nice. I've got pita chips.
I have unhealthy soup.
So good soup.
All soup is high in sodium, but still, I like this is the Amy's brand. It's really good.
Very nice.
Oh man.
When I can't make my own, I mean.
So how awesome are you, Scott?
Awesome. What do you mean?
Nothing. I think that's awesome that you cook soup. I do a little cooking myself. I've just never been able to pull off soups. I always make it like too salty or whatever. Although I can make a killer spaghetti sauce from nothing but tomatoes and spices.
It's hard to do.
Yeah, it is. It's really hard.
I just have long experience with soups. I like making them in the crock pot too, which is like fix it and get it almost.
Oh, very nice. All right, guys. So our break is about up. Unless anybody has any last minute stuff. Daniel?
No, I'm good, dude.
Diego pissed off Garmin. That was great.
Yeah, that's a sensitive topic.
What do you know about it, bitch? That's what I got from it.
And yeah, pretty much.
The reason Alfonso smiled is because he's in the same boat. He's been a ghoul for 200 some years.
Okay, so it's assumed that you guys will tell your ghouls about the task you've been given. Is that correct? When you return?
Yeah, Valentino will.
Yes.
Yeah.
Bianca?
Oh, I'm sorry, what? What did you ask?
I was asking, when you return from the meeting, I assume you guys will tell your ghouls about the task you've been given.
Oh, right, of course, yes.
Okay. So I know where to put our next scene. As soon as I get a mouthful of pita swallowed.
Pita.
What was that, Nosferatu's name again?
Madame Cloaca.
Cloaca.
Cloaca sounds vaguely porno to me. I don't know.
It means sewer.
Oh. What kind of porn have you been watching, Scott?
Scheiße.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, serious face.
All right, so with that, I'll open our next scene. We open our next scene outside the gates of Casa Hardesat as the iron gates clang shut and the servant locks the gates behind you. The four of you are standing outside in accompaniment with your ghouls as the group of vampires and their accompaniment stand outside in the fog-shrouded streets of Rome. The 8 of you have gathered around, and we enter our scene as the camera comes in just post-discussion of the task that lay before you. As the 4 of you have finished explaining, taking turns, describing the urgency of this task and the nature of the task you've been given to hunt down this thief, this ravager of libraries that has ransacked many different places in search of these rare manuscripts and texts. And I'll actually open the floor, and the camera will shift to the Lambs of Isaac as they now stand in the dark, fog-shrouded streets of Rome with this task stretching before them.
Well, I cannot speak for anyone else, but the first task I would like to take care of is the problem of feeding before we set out to get ourselves into more trouble, as in times past.
These are different times, Valentino. We must be careful not to encroach on another's domain.
Yes, yes.
Some of your ghouls seem silent in thought to the task that stretches before you.
My lord, if I may.
Mateo speaks up.
Garamond looks sidelong at Mateo. Speak.
If this thief wanted to get out of Rome, smuggle these books quickly, they would have need condottiero. I have not been to Rome in many years. I do not know it nearly as well or claim to. But I know condottieri. Give me an hour, and I will find the best place to hire the help, the kind of help he would have needed. It might be a good place to start our investigation.
Garamond nods. Of course. Tread lightly.
Nonsense. Diego's ghoul, Alfonso, speaks up. Traipse mercenaries is not what we need now. The occult nature of these texts suggests that experts in this matter need to be sought out. They would have been consulted by the thief before such brash maneuvers were taken. I have contacts in the occult underground which might locate these experts in Rome. Surely they might have been consulted on the nature of rare books. Perhaps the thief would have even looked for remaining tomes, not just in the Vatican. That is what I would suggest we start our search. Humbly, of course. Alfonso gives a smile of false modesty.
Ever resourceful when you are, Alfonso. See it done.
Excellent. Alfonso bows at the waist. Within the hour, I shall have a location, I assure you, my lord. Gabrine scowls at your side, Valentino. I think I would prefer to go with Mateo. Chasing after mercenaries sounds much more entertaining than exploring a dusty library.
Valentino pauses to think, and then nods. Go with him.
Do not worry, I shall watch your back, eh? Gabrine smiles over at Mateo, who scowls. His scowl darkens.
Garamond is going to pull Mateo closely and kind of whisper to him solely. Be careful in this area. You know as well as I do what is out there. I trust you have the ability to seek this out unhidden, yes.
Mateo nods grimly.
Don't get
Quick and
caught.
quiet. He kind of grasps the back of Mateo's head and kind of pushes his forward to his, knocking heads. Quick and quiet.
Quick and quiet, my lord.
Gabrine smirks. When have I ever been caught, master?
Valentino grins.
And with that, Mateo turns to depart, his cloak swirling behind him as he walks off the fog of the Palatine Hill. Hey, wait for me! Gabrine runs after him, sheathing the knife and the bandolier around his shoulder, the two ghouls vanishing into the night. What would you have me do, my love? Robert speaks up, looking to Bianca.
Bianca would turn and look to Robert. Perhaps you should help Alfonso with his inquiry into the occult.
I know nothing of such matters, but I can at least provide a coach. I have ample coin to ensure that our transportation is a smooth one.
Wonderful, Alfonso speaks up. Just the man I wish to go with.
Valentino turns to Robert. I think that's a good idea. Mercenaries are probably too dangerous for you, Richard.
Robert gives you a black look from across the way, but again does not rise to the bait, turning to look at Bianca and give her a kiss atop her forehead.
Where shall we meet up? In an hour.
Bianca would look to the others. I assume here, if that is all right with everyone else.
Valentino nods.
It suits. Easy to find.
Robert nods.
And in the meantime, master?
Alfonso speaks up.
I assume you will be looking for this Madame Sewer, hmm?
We might first follow Valentino's suggestion.
Of course.
The camera pans to Gehrman to see how he is taking this in.
Gehrman is standing there with his arms crossed as he waits for the others to discuss before they can depart. He seems prepared and ready to leave.
So with that...
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Oh, no, it's okay.
You just could tell Alfonso, be gentle with him. This is his first time.
Ah, of course. Alfonso gives a faint smirk, his eyebrow cocking in Robert's direction. Robert looks a bit unnerved at finding company with these other ghouls, but he keeps a brave face and he embraces Bianca passionately, giving her a quick kiss on her cheek before departing and turning to walk with Alfonso off into the night. And you can just hear Alfonso say, "So are you a reading man, Robert?" as they walk down the street of Palatine Hill and vanish into the fog.
Valentino looks over to Bianca. He seems nice.
Bianca would look, after watching Robert disappear, she would look back to Valentino, somewhat of a discouraging look upon her brow. Valentino, must you be so cruel to my ghoul? He does love me, you know.
Valentino just has a wide grin. I'm just being courteous.
Well then, shall we begin?
The night is still relatively early. You can see from the position of the moon that the zenith of the night is just approaching. Midnight is perhaps around the corner.
Bianca would nod in agreement with Diego, and she would be willing to follow the others where they see fit.
Valentino nods, also thinking of Diego's words of domain and how much he should be concerned of hunting in this city.
All right, so the night is yours, Lambs of Isaac. Where do we intend to go?
Assuming anyone would follow, Valentino is going to walk into the streets, and as has been successful in the past, he'll be looking for inns or taverns, places where strangers happen upon each other, where he comes in contact with women the most frequently.
Inns and taverns are indeed plentiful in Rome, perhaps overwhelmingly so. And as the four of you, I assume everyone follows Valentino, unless you mean to do your own thing.
Gehrman would follow with Valentino. At least he also intends to feed before they begin.
All right, so Bianca and Diego are also following after?
Yes.
Diego is more than willing to stick to the original plan to stay together.
All right, and with that, as the four of you leave the Palatine Hill and walk down the Corso, which is, of course, the main road which stretches through Rome and spans the Tiber, as you approach the river, you see that prostitutes are in no short supply here in Rome, and feeding is plentiful and could be fairly easy. The Piazza di Venezia is across the Tiber River, and you can see that's where a main congregation square this time of night. Although not many Romans are out at midnight this evening. Although the prostitutes are out in force, and of course the twisting cobbled roads lead off into the Jewish quarter where all the shanties are. So you can essentially head off into the wealthier district, or move into the Jewish quarter and move about there in search of prey.
Valentino is going to aim towards the wealthier district.
All right, and since Valentino seems to be leading the way, the rest of the Lambs of Isaac follow him into the Piazza Venezia. And I should mention that Rome is laid out around the seven hills, of course, with the River Tiber bisecting the very center of the city. The four of you have entered the northern part of the city, consisting of exclusive residential districts. And the Piazza Venezia is the main forum in Rome, and as the four of you pass into this forum, you see the most famous road running north through the Piazza Colonna in the distance. This area is dominated by a statue of Augustus Caesar and ends at the Piazza del Popoli. And across the way from the Piazza Venezia, where you're currently standing, the Church of Santa Maria del Popolo, an obelisk and several fountains are here dominating the center of this forum. Several prostitutes call out to you as the four vampires walk the streets of Rome, and you look around and you see that there are not many taverns in this particular quarter of Rome. although shadowy figures do linger on the street corners, conducting dark business at this hour. So as you arrive in the Piazza Venezia, the camera is going to turn to the 4 Canaanites as they enter.
The city is magnificent, Diego says. Why have I never visited here before?
I had heard tales of its beauty and size, though being here in person is something else.
I think I'll take a brief stroll while you go about your business. I'll be back shortly.
Valentino nods and heads in the direction of one of these women who seems to be a prostitute. As in the past, he's had mixed success in finding women who are betrothed or married, but also serving as a prostitute. So he will start there.
So you mean to canvass the prostitutes in Rome to find one who's married?
Yeah, married or has a lover.
All right, go ahead and roll your manipulation streetwise. Difficulty will be probably 8. Most prostitutes are not willing to disclose their personal relationships. You roll that 10 again. It isn't before long, Valentino, that you do come across one such prostitute who admits... It actually takes you a little while, I should mention, 20 minutes or so, of canvassing the Piazza Venezia, but near the bridge which crosses the Tiber River, you find a prostitute who begrudgingly admits to you that her husband waits her at home. She asks you if that turns you on more, and if you've got coin to back up your promises, and you can see that she's looking at you with a bit of barely concealed disgust.
Valentino will say it does turn him on and that he is interested and very much has coin, and that he would like to find somewhere private for them to go.
She demands to see your money before going anywhere with you.
He pulls out a few silver coins to show that he is good for it.
And of course, the woman who is scantily dressed, as most harlots are, calls herself Elphidia. And as you show her the gleam of coin in the night air, she smiles somewhat and resumes her routine as she slips an arm around your waist, nodding towards an alleyway nearby in the Piazza Venezia. And with her firmly in hand, Valentino, you find it child's play to lead her off. Go ahead and describe what we see as the camera follows Valentino and his prostitute.
As Valentino, almost in entertainment, he lets this woman lead him to the alleyway as though she is in control. And once they are out of sight and in a discreet location, he would use his well-practiced mannerisms and etiquette to get this woman's full attention on him and begin to nuzzle at her neck before segueing into the kiss.
She's in the middle of disrobing her unmentionables when you sink your fangs into her neck and you feel the spill of that sweet blood crash over your tongue. How much do you intend to take from her?
Probably no more than 2 points of blood. I don't want her unconscious in the alley.
She shudders against you in pleasure, rocking her body and pressing it firmly up against your own. Her breasts crushed against your chest as she gasps, and you hear her heart hammer in her chest as you continue to feed Valentino. You gain 2 blood points. When it is over and you finally manage to pull your fangs away from her, she collapses against the wall, slumps against it, her legs like rubber beneath her, very weak, as her head lolls back in the way a drunkard might.
As best as he could, he would try and let her collapse with him so that she doesn't get hurt or fall against the wall. Let her appear to have just fallen drunk, and he would have, by this point, be well experienced in needing to lick the wound to make none the wiser.
Do you pay her?
I would leave her coin. Valentino has a full intention of finding her in the future.
And as you leave a coin or two for her, where do you leave the coin as camera focuses in on Valentino?
Valentino would hide it amongst the clothes that she had already disrobed in.
And as you pay her, leaving her there collapsed, half conscious, rather looking very drunk, her wound freshly concealed, we move away from the alleyway and we...
Actually, the one last thing he would do, even though it would decrease what he got out of it, he would feed her 1 point of his blood back to her, 1 point of his vitae, just so that he could establish something with her, even if it meant him only getting one, just a small amount back.
Interesting.
So as she lays partly unconscious, he would begin that bond with her.
Are you, how are you feeding her?
I would just bite down on the wrist, and then as she lays there in ecstasy and partial unconsciousness, let it flow into her mouth, and then I would do the best I could to clean her mouth so it didn't appear there was blood on her.
Alright, roll a 1d10. Don't get a 1. You have perfect privacy, and no one seems to come upon you as you commit this act on her, pressing your wrist against her lips. She moans against your wrist, and her plump lips opening up as Alphidia begins to drink, and almost hunger for it more in her delirium. You find you have to actually pull away your wrist from her mouth.
Valentino kind of brushes a hand across her forehead and lets her fall into unconsciousness as he leaves.
And the camera pans away to a different part of the Piazza Venezia as we see Diego and German and Bianca.
May I just intercede here and say that I do believe Diego went off for a moment, so she would actually, Bianca would request companionship with Gehrman of all individuals, and if he obliged, and she does assume he needs to feed, she would follow him to wherever he ends up walking, and in fact, as they begin to walk, she would strike up conversation with him by saying, "Do pray tell, Gehrman, tell me what you think of Mistress Fanchon."
Gehrman would agree. He seems intent on going to find some way to feed, so he allows her to accompany him. And he looks back to her while they strike up conversation. Mistress Fanchon is a necessity for the Camarilla. And it is at that fact that I hold her in some regard.
Yes, of course, but she is a usurper. It does not seem that Hardestadt holds her in the most highest regard as the others. I wonder if she can be trusted.
Caramon pauses for a moment in their steps. Why do you ask?
Bianca would also pause, kind of giving a small look over her shoulder before looking back up to Gehrman. Well, I must confess, I hold no favor for the mistress, and therefore I do not feel any displeasure when I can allude to you that she spoke to me while we were in that room. Through the mind, of course. She said something along the lines of rewarding me if I were to steal the manuscripts after finding them.
Cameron kind of throws his head back in a chuckle as he rests his hands on his hips. I would say I'm not surprised. Word of advice, Julietta. Do not trust the Tremere. When they get something over on you and you've done something that they clearly wish hidden, this is a thorn that you will never get out of your side.
I have no love for the Tremere, for in fact I do share some of what Hardestart feels about their clan. But I find it interesting that she spoke to me then. Perhaps she spoke to any of the others. Did she speak to you?
No. I think she came to you because you seem more likely to help her. Diego would not, because his Toreador love and his responsibilities as prince. Valentino is Ventrue. He would not help her. My talents are not for her suited for her nature in this task. You seem and remain the only candidate capable.
You have much confidence in our friends, Gehrman. How do you not know Valentino wouldn't turn against us? He is a Ventrue.
Against us, I do not know. But it would not happen by taking sides with someone like Ben Shaw.
Bianca would nod, to some degree, taking in what he said. It's been a long time since she's been around any of these individuals, and there are moments where her paranoia that she has always had to deal with, sometimes it rears its head in the most unlikely of times. So she has found over the years to be prominent about what's going on, to try and be one step ahead of what is happening around them. So she takes in what Gehrman says, and she doesn't say anything more about it, simply nodding her head upwards for him to continue on. She knows he needs to feed. So yes.
Gehrman will be looking for an easy meal, something that he can get done quickly, and then return to the others to attend to their pressing matters. Something along the lines of a drunken man or a homeless man or a prostitute that has singled herself out.
The Piazza Venezia is a rather upscale part of Rome, and the derelicts and drunkards are not so plentiful as you might otherwise hope. However, there are still many out at this hour. During your walk with Julietta, roll your wits alertness, difficulty 7, to see if you spot someone. You do indeed manage to spot a man standing at the mouth of an alleyway, looking around. He appears to be waiting for someone dressed in a cloak. He looks to be in his late 20s, perhaps early 30s. You know that the mouth of the alleyway is perfect for subduing prey. You could easily drag him deeper inside.
Gammon will do so. He will attempt to come up upon the man approaching from behind him, and quickly snatch him, covering his mouth, into the dark alleyway where he can administer the kiss.
Given your levels of potence and your proficiency with fighting, a roll would be pointless. You easily overpower him without even trying. Your arms like bars of iron as he jerks and struggles against you. You drag him deeper into the alleyway, and his struggling ceases the moment you slice your fangs into his unwashed neck. But his blood is hot and rich and sweet.
Does he appear to be young and perhaps healthy?
You can taste the notes in his blood that he has had hard living. He is relatively young, like I said, late 20s, but he has dabbled quite a bit in opium and alcohol, if you recognize those notes in his blood.
Okay. Given this man's persuasion towards alcohol and opiates, he's going to be taking 2 points of blood, for he needs the blood to survive.
And as Garamond feeds, the camera pans to Bianca to see what she is doing.
Bianca had followed Garamond into the darkness of the alley, and she stands just a little away, not too far off, but still within the shadows of the alley, so she does not give Garamond away to any others. And she merely takes in the sight of one of her fellow Cainites getting his sustenance for the evening. She will not be taking part in this as the others have. She is so used to feeding privately, not in such a public and vulnerable manner. So for a time, she would never resort to this type of she wouldn't resort to this type of feeding only unless she was pretty desperate, which she is not. So for the time being, she merely is a companion to one of her fellow lambs until he has finished.
All right, Garamond, describe what we're seeing as you finish feeding, and his limp form, it lays helplessly in your arms.
As Garamond takes and withdraws the blood from this man's neck, he's got his arms cocked around his head to pull it to the side, giving him easier access, as his other arm is around his waist, holding him up. He pulls away. His fangs glistened in the moonlight as he retracts them and then licks the open wound on the man's neck, closing it up. He's gonna gently set the man down on the ground as he leaves him, wiping some of the blood with the underside of his sleeve.
All right, and as you finish feeding Garamond, the camera pans briefly to Julietta.
As Julietta sees Garamond gently set this man down upon the ground and and his head kind of slumps to the side. She sees that he is just so helpless, and it would just be so easy as she looks at his neck, as it's so weak. It would be so easy to just crunch his head right then and there. And this kind of delight, flexes into her. And it's very, very hard for her to not want to give in to just killing this man.
Gammon turns to begin walking back towards Julieta as he gives her kind of a slight nod as if he's finished.
As Gammon comes towards her, though, Julieta easily slips past him, and just it seems like it's almost like a flash. She steps forward, and it's very clear. She takes her foot and slams it into this man's head several times.
And as Julieta begins smashing her foot into this man's face over and over again, breaking his nose and an explosion of blood running over his mouth as his teeth are clattering on the cobblestones of the alleyway, what is Gehrman doing?
Gehrman's going to race over and grab her around, holding her arms to her side and kind of dragging her off. What are you doing?
Bianca, it's almost as though she doesn't even hear Gehrman. She's almost in a daze as she something just takes over her, and she does this. And as he pulls her away, the daze doesn't fade. It's like there's this glee in her face as she does this, and it's very terrifying. But he does manage to grab hold of her, and the damage is pretty well done as they look upon this man's, bloodied and crushed face.
You find by the time you grab Bianca, Gehrman, that the man's jaw is clearly shattered. His teeth are missing. His nose is broken and his eyes are bruised, and he's actually begun to wake up from the pain of being assaulted. The pain of his ruined face has clearly eclipsed the euphoria of the kiss, and he begins moaning thickly as gurgles of blood spill out of the ruinous mess of his face, moaning horribly as he reaches up his hands to touch his face. Bianca, I'm sorry, 1 second. Bianca, do you resist Gehrman grabbing you?
There is a little bit of resistance as she struggles against him, but it's not a full-blown resistance where she tries to tear away from him or anything of that nature.
Okay.
Yeah, Gehrman's going to be dragging her down the hallway, or the alleyway, I should say. Kind of subduing her as she's kicking and struggling in his arms. Once they get out of the alleyway, he releases her. What are you doing back there?
Bianca, once she's released, she kind of lurches forwards to some degree and puts her hands to her knees up top the layers of her skirts, and it is clear if he's looking upon her that she's trying to, at this point, she is now trying to gain control of herself. And whatever delight and madness that had washed over her face, it slowly fades away, and she immediately looks up to Gehrman and quickly tries to recover. Oh, I am so sorry. Forgive me. I don't know what came over me.
Gehrman stands, his brow is furrowed, he's very angry at this. He gets up in Julietta's face as he shoves 2 fingers in her chest. Every place has pawns, and pawns have masters. Keep this in mind in an unknown territory. As he kind of shoves her with his 2 fingers.
And actually, Julieta or Bianca is Gehrman even just pushes you with his 2 fingers. You feel how powerful he actually is. You feel the strength in his hand.
When he pushes her, Bianca, the madness she's trying to push down is there's a quick flare of it again, but she manages to control it. I mean, it's hard for her because she has never been spoken to that way in a very long time. But she knows that they're in a foreign place. Who knows where Cainite's domains lie. And she knows that she needs to try and keep it together. But eventually, she kind of narrows her dark hues at him and lifts her chin. It won't happen again.
Gehrman, as you're faced with this, with Julieta, and you witnessed her horrific attack upon the man, you hear against the across the far alleyway as the 2 of you stand outside a villa. You hear his agonized moaning coming from the alleyway.
Gehrman listens as he returns his gaze, his very angry and hateful gaze towards Bianca, as he points back to the alley. I hope you hear every moan. That is what you have done. And I should hope it would not happen again. And then he's gonna kind of push past her, kind of her with his very broad shoulders. Come.
Bianca allows him to have the last word in this moment, but it's quite hard for her. And as he pushes past her and kind of bumps into her shoulder as they walk, as he beckons her to follow, she does feel as though she is no dog to be, told what to do. But she also knows she, did make a very horrible mistake, and she shouldn't have lost herself. So...
And before you continue, go ahead and follow my instructions. All right, so I've relayed the results of that. Go ahead and continue, Bianca.
Yeah, so she feels annoyed that he spoke to her in that manner, but she's able to control the urge to say anything to him. And she just bites her tongue and follows after him quickly and leaves the scene.
All right. With that, we're going to shift scene. We open our next scene with Diego Vasquez de Sevilla as he walks alone along the banks of the Tiber River in the city of Rome. The moonlight shines overhead as he is left in the majesty and the faded grandeur of the imperial city. And as the camera focuses in on Diego, go ahead and describe what we're seeing.
Diego has found a new fascination in this world, and its name is Rome. It's been a long time since he's been able to walk along the banks of a river so beautiful as this. Sevilla is a port town, and it does see a lot of ocean views, but a city so rich with history as Rome, so much that it seeps into every pore, even in the poorest districts. This is something new for him. And he just wants to take it all in, if only for 10 minutes, while he takes a short, brief stroll and his friends feed. He knows nothing of what Julieta and Gehrman are doing not far away. He's lost in his own thoughts, people watching, thinking about times past.
Roll your self-control, difficulty 8. You feel the familiar euphoria of Rome, the splendid eternal city, and what a perfect name for it. As you see the faded beauty of the Roman Empire here on display. Though the conflict may have weathered the architecture here, it is majestic. It is absolutely beautiful, and you feel the beauty almost begin to overwhelm you, but you maintain your senses. It is the most difficult time you've ever had, not being lost in the beauty here, but Diego manages to keep his senses about him.
He puts a thought deep in his mind that he should look into the architecture of Rome and see about it, maybe integrating it into some of his own work, although it could never be quite as beautiful as the way the ancients did it. But he realizes already that maybe he's wandered too far and lost track of time, so he does turn about and begin to stroll back towards where he was supposed to meet the others.
And just as you pause and begin to turn back, you hear a man call out in Italian, "What brings you here, eh?" You see a man at the far end of the, or not the far end, but 10 feet away from you, about. He has stepped out from one of the alleyways of the piazza, and is looking at you from about 10 feet away, and he's approaching you slowly. You know immediately from his step and manner that he is a cut purse.
"Just taking a stroll along your beautiful river," he replies in accented Italian.
"Ah, foreigner, As he approaches you, you see that the gleam of a knife in his hand from moonlight. Very richly dressed.
Yes, and carrying quite a bit of coin, too. And he'll look around to see if anybody else is around.
Roll wits alertness. Difficulty 6. All right, I'll relay the results of that roll to you. One moment. The camera focuses in on Diego as the cut purse begins to approach him, that slow, meandering, wolfish walk of a predator.
It's been some time since I've met men such as you. How interesting that they still exist in this changing world.
Rome is a dangerous city, foreigner. Why don't you hand over your coin, and we'll look the other way. You can continue having your little walk.
I have a better idea. And Diego looks at the man, and the full force of his presence reaches out to overwhelm him. He's going to attempt to mesmerize him,
All right.
or entrance him even. More powerful than that.
Oh, wow, entrancement.
Yes.
Okay, I'm such a great storyteller. I remember what that roll is.
Appearance plus empathy.
Yeah, appearance empathy. Is the difficulty of his willpower?
Yes.
Current willpower points.
Okay. It's going to be difficulty 4. Oh, wow. One moment.
Actually, it says you should have made that roll for me, but, whatever.
Really?
Yeah, so that I don't know the hold that I have over him.
Oh. Okay.
In future, I guess, if you want.
Yeah, we'll stick with that. We'll stick with that roll. So let's see. Immediately, as your gaze locks with him, Diego, you see his aggression drop. You see the knife drift down to his side as his eyes go wide, and his jaw goes slack, and his eyes kind of lull just a little bit, and you see the telltale signs of one who is completely under your control.
Your accomplice was attempting to steal money from you. I overheard him talking in a brothel not far from here.
What?
You'll want to take care of that. And then see maybe if you can find honest work on the dock. I hear they're always looking for good men.
Yeah. That bastard.
Yes, he is trouble, and Diego's eyes will shift to a man who he's revealing that he knows is there.
And of course, the other man who you had been aware of remains in the shadows, eagerly waiting to take down another mark. The cut purse grips his knife with murderous rage and narrows his eyes past you towards the accomplice.
What should I do? What
think
do
you
you
know
think
what
I
to
should
do.
do?
He's too dangerous to live.
Yes, and he storms off past you with the knife in his hand, completely ignoring you. You hear, Diego, voices, male voices in the distance, although you haven't enhanced your hearing, so you can't quite hear what they're saying. But the next thing is not so hard to hear, as you hear a loud cry as the man violently stabs his accomplice in the gut, and a mortal struggle begins to take place in the alleyway.
Diego has lost enough touch with his old humanity that he doesn't feel sorry for the man who tried to mug him, nor should he, for this man has probably cut more than a few throats in his time.
And it is with a violent murder taking place just feet away that we leave Diego as he turns to return to the piazza. So with that, we shift scene. We open our next scene in the center of the Piazza di Venezia as the Lambs of Isaac reconverge together after their individual departures throughout Rome. We see Giulietta returning, or not Giulietta, but Bianca, who was once Giulietta, returning to the Piazza alongside. She's following after Gehrman, who is leading the way. We also see Valentino emerge from a side alleyway, and Diego walking from the river Tiber as the camera focuses in on the four as they reconverge together. And I should note, as I turn the scene over to the four of you, that the hour approaches, the appointed hour at which you are to meet your ghouls back atop the Palatine Hill is relatively near.
How was your walk, Diego?
Not as good as I might have hoped, he says, and he does look a little bit consternated. I was set upon by brigands, much to their chagrin.
I can imagine.
Well, tell me, how was your Lady of the Night?
Much to my liking. Thank you for asking.
And he'll turn his eyes to Garamond and Julieta, or Bianca.
If you're talking, Daniel, you're muted.
Oh, I apologize. It's this time that Garamond approaches, noticeably irritated in his walk and his mannerisms, as he approaches the other two. Are we finished then?
Everything all right, my friend?
He looks. He takes a small glance back towards Bianca. Everything is fine.
Valentino's eyebrows raise, but he doesn't question it.
All right, the four of you remain there in the Piazza di Venezia.
We should return soon. The hour's almost up.
Agreed.
If no one else says anything, Valentino will lead the way back to the hilltop.
Bianca would nod to the others in agreement as they make their way back, but she would walk over to Diego and slip her arm against his own, looking up to him. Are you quite all right, Diego?
I'm just not used to being so approached, I suppose. But it seems you too ran into a bit of adventure. And he'll actually let his eyes drift down to her foot, the very foot she used to smash the man's face.
Bianca kind of waves her hand somewhat. A misunderstanding, you see. Nothing to be worried about.
I must wonder how many lives I've ruined tonight. But he shrugs. Ah, well.
And as Valentino heads off towards the Palatine Hill back across the Tiber River, and Bianca and Diego are arm in arm, the camera shifts briefly to Garamond.
Garamond will take a moment to watch Bianca carefully as she strolls alongside Diego. He's mulling over in his head how she can be so casual about such an act, and then he'll take up the rear, following all of them.
All right, with that, we'll change scene. We emerge back on the hilltop of the Palatine Hill, and the cobbled Roman roads slope at a gentle angle ever upwards into the opulent and beautiful surroundings of the upper quarter. Occasionally a carriage will rumble past you, although they are fewer this time of night. And as you arrive at the appointed meeting place, just outside Casa Hardestad, you see that there is indeed a carriage waiting for you. Robert is standing outside of the carriage, dressed in his finery, and holding the reins of the horses. Alfonso is, as soon as he sees the four of you approach, the door opens to the carriage, and Alfonso steps out, with a smile on his face, closing the door behind him and awaiting you. Off to the side, towards the iron gate, we also see Matteo standing at attention, with Gabrine nearby, leaning up against the iron grate. The camera focuses in on the Lambs of Isaac as they return to reunite with their ghouls, who were apparently early.
Gehrman's going to make a beeline straight to Matteo and kind of clasp him on the shoulder and lead him a small distance away from the others to hear his report.
The camera is going to follow Gehrman and Matteo as they move off to the side.
You're going to be very pleased, my lord.
He says swiftly in a short clipped tone.
On the western side of Rome, there's only one place where condottieri gather together to find employment. It's called the Three Lions Inn. I was there briefly with Gabrine to see the inside, and it's apparently some kind of clearinghouse for mercenaries, caravan guards, all other forms of hired muscle and steel. The owner is a Thomas Frasore. He has a strict no firearms or steel rule within his establishment. He maintains it with violence, I'm heard, but flesh-on-flesh mayhem is tolerated, if not encouraged. There's also a brothel upstairs in the Three Lions Inn. They use it to attract the rowdy clientele there. If your man was looking for an escort, he possibly asked around there. There's no other place condottieri would have been.
Gehrman nods as he listens. Is there any kindred influence? Any note to which clan may have hold over this establishment?
Curiously, no, my lord. I could sense no Cainites in the area. My senses are sharp. You know I would recognize them.
Of course. I trust you in this matter. Very well. I will ponder these. Thank you, Matteo. As he kind of nods and wraps his shoulder.
If I might, my lord, it is unusual this time of night that no Cainites would be there. It is ample feeding ground.
I agree. Either the Camarilla knows it to be a problem area, or the Sabbat have taken it over, or, less likely, it's just a rowdy group.
Matteo nods.
Let's prepare for the latter. If it is Sabbat hindered, we must not go unprepared.
Aye, my lord.
Matteo nods and turns to return to the group with you as the camera shifts to Diego as he's arriving alongside Bianca.
Sorry to keep you waiting, Alfonso.
Not at all, my lord. We had a pleasant little journey through Rome. I hope yours was as well.
I wish I could say so. But no matter, what did you discover?
Alfonso frowns somewhat at your journey not being a pleasant one, but he shrugs and goes on to continue. Well, my contacts say that the occult is primarily focused in two different areas in this city. We know that... He pauses for a moment as if to consider. Well, I hardly mention it at all because I wonder if you would have truck with the Jews, but apparently there is a Kabbalist in the Jewish quarter in Rome. He would undoubtedly know of
matters occult and mysterious. Then, of course, there is a rare bookseller. There is a place called Alphonse's. He smirks, as Alphonse is the Italian version of his name, Di Sarsina. He apparently has an almost miraculous ability to obtain copies of works that are either locked away in the vaults of the Vatican Library, he smirks, or are otherwise incredibly difficult to locate. Many, I'm told, high echelon members of the church acquire forbidden tomes from this man. Alphonse Di Sarsina's shop is just on the other side of the River Tiber.
Alfonso, you miraculous man. And he looks to Bianca.
Bianca would look back to Diego after greeting Robert. This bookshop sounds promising, Diego.
And as you greet Robert, he leans in to give you a quick kiss to your cheek.
Valentino would have originally been following Garamond up to the gate where Gabrine had been to hear his report.
And as you arrive, Valentino, you see Gabrine eye Matteo and Garamond as they walk off before looking back at you.
Welcome back, Master. Did you enjoy the Eternal City?
Well enough. What do you have for me, Gabrine?
Matteo and I uncovered some rowdy place. Very nice. Called the Three Lions. It's a place where the condottieri come to find jobs and also wet their wicks. I was tempted myself to go up into the brothel upstairs, but that one over there,
and he motions towards Matteo's back,
would not allow me to take my pleasures.
How unfortunate. We are in the heart of Rome, and does not let you enjoy any pleasures here while we're visiting.
It takes more than one dour-faced to stop me.
Good man.
But business is business, eh? Perhaps afterwards.
Yes, there will be time for that. Good work all the same.
And it's just at this time that Garamond and Matteo are returning Valentino.
He would go with them along with Gabrine to rejoin.
The camera focuses in on the Lambs of Isaac as they more or less reunite with their individual ghouls and discuss their options.
I think this 3 lines in is worth a careful investigation.
What have we found at the library? He looks towards both Robert and Alfonso.
Alfonso smiles in his sort of false modesty.
We have much information. As I have just finished saying to my master, I've learned of 2 individual contacts in the Mystic Underground. One is a Jewish Kabbalist in the Jewish Quarter, who seems to have much knowledge of these occult matters, and the other is a rare book dealer with many connections, highly placed offices in the church. They procure books from him that might end them up on a pyre if they were to be discovered.
No mention of any strange men asking around about tomes they shouldn't.
Perhaps there might be, Alfonso admits. I did not know. I only merely procured the locations through my contacts. I did not, as of yet, have time to investigate them. You understand, of course.
Slightly irritated, he'll look away towards Valentino and the rest of the Lambs of Isaac. Your call. I say we investigate the inn.
I agree. At least initially.
I am thinking that perhaps the Kabbalist would be best visited during the day.
During the day, my lord? Alfonso looks confused.
Unless, of course, you wish us to knock down his door in the middle of the night.
Oh, I should have mentioned. He stays up at all hours of the night. The Jewish quarter, apparently, they see him as some sort of protector. They believe he has Kabbalistic magics that keep them from being preyed upon by the cut purses of Rome.
You think?
I see.
Do you think perhaps he could be a Canaanite?
Alfonso pauses.
I doubt it, my lord. But it is not impossible.
Does your doubt come with reason?
Only from what I have heard. His name is Adoniah ben Reuven, and is apparently very well loved by the Jews in his quarter. He associates freely with Rabbi, and forgive me for saying so, my lord, but Canaanites do not have often an affinity for those of great faith.
Gehrman kind of smirks and chuckles at this a little.
Of course, I leave it to you and your learned opinion as to how to proceed. Alfonso falls silent.
Aside from this, we should find lodging for the day coming. We may have time yet, but I would rather not leave it to the last minute.
I have already procured that. Robert speaks up, looking at, addressing the gathered group. I procured not only this carriage, but also lodgings on the Capitoline Hill, on the other end of the Roman quarter. They seemed very well disposed to putting up the Earl of Gloucester and his friends.
Good man, Ronald.
Robert's jaw tightens.
Bianca would look to Robert after a moment. Thank you, my love. And she kind of looks over to Valentino and gives him a kind of snarl of a look.
Anything for you, my love, Robert says, glaring daggers at Valentino.
Valentino smiles innocently.
Good. Then we will retire to this place, plan our next moves. Agreed?
Agreed.
If I may, my lord.
Mateo speaks up.
Of course.
Time is of the essence. If I were this thief, and I knew I had offended powers so great, I would be eager to be gone of here. Perhaps we should make use of the night we have left.
He raises a good point.
Very well.
We could visit the inn first, and then the next night visit the bookshop.
Gehrman's eyes are going to drift over to Diego. You've been quite silent, friend.
Just thinking, my friend. It would perhaps behoove us to break our oath already. What I mean is, perhaps we should split up after all. Cover more territory, you understand?
Agreed. While it would be beneficial for us to stay together. It seems, as he kind of rests his hands on his hips once again, Time is of the essence. Covering more ground would corner the thief more quickly.
After looking up in the sky for a moment, Valentino speaks up. We have something on the order of 4.5 hours before dawn.
Good. Myself and Mateo will go to the inn. Who will follow me?
I will join you, along with Gabrine. He looks over to his companion.
Ah, perfect. There are many ladies I have yet to say hello to.
Gabrine smirks.
I would prefer going to the bookshop.
Robert nods. And that is where we will go, my love.
Alfonso and I will visit the Kabbalist first.
Wise choice, my lord. Alfonso nods.
Cameron nods. Very well. Then we will all meet back before daybreak at this, as he motions to Robert, sanctuary, yes?
Robert nods. The home is on the the Capitoline Hill. We are currently on the Palatine. It is across the way. Robert points in that direction, in a westerly direction. Just go to the Capitoline Hill. The estate I mentioned should be a bit further in. You will see the carriage outside.
Good. Best of luck to you all, as he kind of gives them all a slight bow of etiquette before turning on his heel and walking.
Mateo turns and follows after Gehrman.
And Valentino with him.
Gabrine brings up the rear, spinning a knife in his hand. Good luck all, as he strides off into the night fog. Well, shall we to the Kabbalist, my lord? Alfonso glances at you, Diego.
I will be leaning on you heavily to speak to him. My knowledge of the occult is very minimal.
I am quite pleased you have chosen to visit this Kabbalist. He has a great deal of knowledge, I am to understand, regarding the mysteries of the world.
Ah, you see now, that is because I trust you, Alfonso. I do not expect you to lead me astray.
Why, well, thank you, master. He smirks in false modesty. He seems to enjoy the praise, though. Shall we away to the bookshop, my love? Robert turns to look at you, Bianca.
Yes, Robert. Let us go.
Perhaps we could trouble you for a ride in your carriage, hmm?
Alfonso looks to Robert, who nods.
The Jewish quarter is on the way, after all.
Of course. Come along with us.
Robert goes to open the door of the carriage for Bianca first and motions with a smile at her.
Oh, she would step in.
All right, everyone load up and then we'll be off. Robert says, turning to climb up into the bucket seat of the wagon and of the carriage and get the reins of the horses, I should say.
Diego allows Alfonso to enter first and then follows himself and closes the door.
And as Robert whips the horses, the carriage pulls off into the night and you vanish into the fog. And with that, we will open... we have time enough to do one scene. We're going to go with Diego and Alfonso as we change over. The carriage rolls through the Jewish quarter, and you see firsthand, Diego, as you look out the window, the ramshackle state of the hovels and the squalid poverty that the Jews live in here. And eventually, the carriage stops outside a home, which looks all at once different and yet the same to the others. You see that the exterior of the home actually has a silver, what's the name? A silver mezuzah, which is slightly tarnished, a small box containing inscriptions in Hebrew that is posted in every doorway to a Jewish home. The house is somewhat ramshackle, however. Through the windows, papers of every description can be seen strewn in disarray, and there is a very large window across the front. You can see that right away. As the carriage pulls to a stop outside the house of Adonaiah, and Robert permits you time to exit the carriage.
Which he does so with alacrity, helping Alfonso if he needs it, although he knows he doesn't.
Alfonso allows you to help him, even though he truly doesn't need help, closing the door behind him. And Robert nods from up above on the carriage seat. Good luck. And he spurs the horses on as the carriage pulls away, leaving the two in front of the house of Adonaiah.
I have had a thought.
Just the one, my lord?
Sometimes I miss your smart mouth.
Alfonso smirks at you.
For this little ruse, you will play the part of the master, and I your manservant. I will allow you to do all the talking. It will be safer that way.
Ah, role reversal. I hope you will be a very attentive servant. Alfonso grins.
Diego's face grows a little grim, but then he smiles a bit.
After a moment, Alfonso's mirth dies as he nods, and he seems to understand the severity of the situation, gathering his clothes up about him and adjusting his sleeves and his collar as he turns to stride confidently towards the house of Adonaiah. Inside the Kabbalist's home, you can hear chanting within. In Hebrew. Of course, you don't speak Hebrew, but you can identify it as such, as you have some experience with the Jews, given your position in Spain, Diego, and their unfortunate treatment at the hands of the Spanish queen. After a moment, Alfonso knocks on the door, and you see that close examination exposes dried bits of potter's clay in front of the door, but little else as you await. There's no sign over Adonaiah's establishment, and nor does he seem to come to the door before his prayers are finished. Alfonso is actually a bit irritated and knocks a third time a few minutes later when the Hebrew, in its own time, eventually stops. When Adonaiah does at last answer the door, you are confronted with... One moment. You're confronted with the sight of a handsome Semitic Jew with a tall and fit figure. It's actually quite surprising to you as he seems to fill the doorway. He moves with a vitality that can only be attributed to a man in the prime of his life. He's dressed in black with a white prayer shawl draped over his shoulders, which forms a hood around his mass of black hair. His beard is finely trimmed, and his features are strong, straight, and vaguely exotic looking. There is something severe and piercing in his eyes, like the coming of a terrible storm, as he looks down at the two of you. He's a quite tall man. If you should look closer, Diego, you might notice the clay under his fingernails as he rests one hand in the doorway, which match the clay on the ground outside. Good evening. He greets you in almost perfect Italian. But he's not looking at Alfonso, who begins to bluster into, "Ah, hello, greetings, Adonai. I bring you greetings from, are you familiar with," and Adonai raises a hand and actually cuts off Alfonso and is looking directly at you, Diego, with those piercing eyes. "And what brings the child of Cain to my door?"
Diego is actually taken aback a bit by this. The wonders never cease. You know such a thing on sight, do you?
Alfonso is gaping like a fish left out of water. And he steps back. Clearly the ruse is gone before it ever began. "Do not worry. I have had truck with the sons and daughters of Cain before. I am not so adverse to your presence as the Christians might be. Might I offer you to come into my home?" Adonai motions with his hand.
You are most kind, and I graciously accept.
He steps back inside and holds the door open for you as you step inside. And Alfonso, clearly edged out of his role as the pretend master, frowns and follows after you. And as Adonai closes the door, we will change scene. The interior of Adonai's home is a curious sight. It's part laboratory, part library, part temple. The three different aspects of his home seem to meet somewhere in the middle as he invites you inside and clears places on his rough wooden benches for you to sit, clearly a generous host. Yet he keeps his distance from you. The Kabbalist obviously recognizes you for what he is, for what you are, Diego, and yet he seems willing enough to listen to what you have to say.
"Might I ask why you have come to visit me in my home?"
Adonai says as he withdraws somewhat and stands about 5 feet away from you.
In that regard, at least, my manservant Alfonso can take the lead.
Yes, of course. My contacts have told me that you are well in the know, shall we say, of the mystic underground here in Rome. Your influence in the matters occult are quite impressive, and we have come to seek your guidance and your counsel on this matter.
Adonai pauses for a moment. Like most questions, there is much to discern yet. Perhaps, in order to give us a better starting point, I might cast the gematria for you, my guest. I did not catch your name. Adonai looks at you, Diego.
My name is Diego Vasquez, originally of Sevilla.
And I am Adonai ben Reuven, of the tribe of Israel.
It is a pleasure to meet you. And I must tell you, I do not follow the current trend of my people as in regards to your own.
That is encouraging to hear. Small favors, at least. Do I detect a Spanish hint to your voices?
See, you're very observant. It is hard to discern sometimes when speaking Italiano.
Perhaps you would like to speak in Spanish instead. He switches effortlessly to your native tongue.
Ah, yes, much better.
Would you like me to cast the gematria for you, Diego Vasquez de Sevilla?
Please explain what that means.
The gematria is a process of divination by the Kabbalah. I will ask your full name, translate it into Hebrew, and add up the value of the Hebrew letters in the name. I will also ask you your date of birth and divine the portents that the Kabbalah reads to me.
Interesting. And as I have told you, my name is Diego Vasquez.
Of course. Adonaiah turns away from you and he produces a bit of chalk, or charcoal, I should rather say, from the nearby table, and he begins writing upon a bit of parchment which he grabs from a stack nearby, which is nearly teetering to falling over. He scribbles on the paper, and he also asks you, and the year of your birth, without even looking up.
He smirks a little bit at this. February the 14th, 1408.
Adonaiah does not look surprised, nor does he pause in his writing. He closes his eyes and lifts his hands up and begins intoning something in Hebrew. Make a perception awareness roll, Diego. All right, relay the results of the...
Diego seems very impressed, but keeps quiet. Whatever's happening is definitely having an effect on this room.
As Adonaiah lowers his hands, he pauses for a moment, and then turns to rummage around the sea of papers for a large scrawled chart, which he unfolds across the table, referring back and forth between the scribbled numbers on the paper that he had begun with and the chart. Eventually, after a few moments, with Alfonso shifting uncomfortably on the bench next to you, he looks up with a frown.
The sword of Uriel awaits for you, I'm afraid. I see it here. Fire, a conflagration, and in the center of its pages, burning. I see pages burning. Avoid the numbers 16 and 9. Be kind to old women and young girls. Take the taste of blood from another's mouth, where it is an abomination, but beware the chalice that will be offered to you. Beyond that, I can see no more.
And he covers up the chart with a roll of his hand as the parchment furls back.
I believe our business is concluded.
Adonaiah adjusts the hem of his robes.
Diego doesn't seem to know what to say. He does look to Alfonso for some comfort in this.
Alfonso's mouth is agape, like agog, like he's not sure what to say. Clearly he felt whatever it was that you felt as well.
Are you truly a seer, then?
Adonaiah looks at you from across the room with a steadiness that you have never seen before in a mortal.
I am the guardian of the tribe of Judah. I protect my people in this city.
And a wonderful job you do at that, I'm sure. Very well, Adonaiah. Yes, I think our business is completed here, and I thank you. If there's any favors I can give you, please just name them.
Of course. He nods. I shall be here. Good evening, son of Cain.
Good evening, son of Adam.
Adonaiah stands there, almost eerily still, and waits for you to go. Alfonso seems more than willing as he quickly rises.
Come, Alfonso. And he
As
will
you-
indeed depart.
Oh, go ahead. And as you indeed step outside the house of Adonaiah, and we shift scene as you emerge into the Roman night. You can't help but feel, Diego, as you step out back into the Jewish quarter, that almost a kind of pressure has been lifted off of you, and you could not describe it better than to say that, as though you were like a weight has been taken off of you, whether off your mind or your body, you're not sure.
Incredible. Did you feel that, Alfonso?
Alfonso nods very quickly.
Yes, Master, he is everything my contacts described and more.
Why did I not write that prophecy down? And he begins to search his robes for notes and as though to find some way of recording it. But upon realizing he has no ink, damn!
The most important part is clear to me. Avoid the chalice.
Yes. Was that a literal chalice or perhaps a metaphorical chalice?
With a mystic such as that, who can say?
Indeed. I also remembered to avoid the numbers 16 and 9. Be kind to old women and young girls.
I will allow you to remember that for me.
Alfonso smirks.
I am always kind to women and young girls, of course.
He'll pat him on the back as they begin their long trek back to the meeting place.
And the camera follows Diego and his faithful servant Alfonso Cordon as they move through the Jewish quarter of Rome. And the camera pans up into the sky as we see the stars and the full moon as the nether night continues on for the Lambs of Isaac as we end our scene. And that's it for the session, guys. So that concludes our game for today. What did you guys think of that?